Chapter 33-27. The Buddha's light protecting my body in vain, puff. The green-robed man opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Due to his heavy injuries, he lost his consciousness and fell into a coma. Just like half of his arm that had already left his body but was still holding the golden bough, he fell down. At the same time, a dozen exclamations filled with horror sounded instantly. This scene was too sudden. The group of geniuses behind the green-robed man were shocked and could not accept it. Oh my God, what happened? Am I seeing things? The golden arrow was about to pierce his left chest, but it suddenly turned around at the last moment. What a joke, how did he do it? This ability is too terrifying. It's terrifying. The green-robed man used his treasure, the golden bough, but he died inexplicably. What should we do? Before figuring out the strangeness, can we still make a move? Even the bald monk who was chanting was shocked. The chanting in his mouth stopped abruptly, but his mouth was still open. He subconsciously glanced at the green-robed man who was falling down with a dull expression on his face. After a full breath, he came back to his senses with a shock. His face flushed. He turned his head and stared at the group of guys who were exclaiming in mid-air behind him, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and save him." Before his voice fell, he had turned his head again and looked at Yi Xian with a dignified face. He said coldly, "Sure enough, you deserve to be called a peerless monster. Although it is a bit exaggerated, you still have some ability. This little monk misjudged you before. Unfortunately, this doesn't change anything. No matter how you did it just now, this little monk can be sure of one thing. Today, you can't escape death." In the next moment, as Wu Chunzi raised his hand and pointed at his glabella, a purple gold light shot out from it. It expanded with the wind and finally turned into a purple gold bowl the size of a baby's head. It hung above Wu Chunzi's head and poured out endless purple gold light, flowing endlessly on his Buddhist robe. Like the Buddha's light, it had completely enveloped his body. For a moment, even his figure became somewhat hazy and blurry under the purple gold light screen. This treasure is called the Purple Gold Alms Bowl, a defensive treasure of my Buddhist sect. Although it is not a quasi-starry sky supreme treasure, it is still a starry sky epic grade Buddhist treasure. In the hazy purple gold Buddha's light, Wu Chunzi seemed to be calm, but his words were clearly filled with arrogance. He said, "Don't be fooled by this layer of Buddha's light that is hazy and thin, but its defensive effect is very terrifying. Just like the golden arrow ray that almost killed the green-robed monk, even if I didn't dodge it and let it touch my body, it would only tickle me. Do you feel despair?" Wu Chunzi was clearly mocking and ridiculing Yi Xian with his last sentence. He was incomparably confident, as if he was toying with Yi Xian like a mouse, and he was the big cat that only wanted to suppress the big mouse. Yi Xian smiled because he suddenly felt that this bald monk in front of him was really very considerate. He had already tested the power of the psychic ability he had just obtained this time. At this moment, Yi Xian was thinking about how to test the power of the psychic abilities and secret techniques he had long mastered, but had upgraded at the same time this time. Unexpectedly, before he could decide which one to test first, this considerate monk had already prepared for it. Since the other party had taken the initiative to ask to be a human target, then it would be impolite to refuse. Yi Xian grinned and instantly decided which psychic secret technique to use. In this situation, the annihilation spear was the best choice. This technique was a psychic secret technique that used a special method to compress a large amount of psychic origin energy to the extreme, making it infinitely dense and transforming it into a formless psychic spear that could be used to attack. Back then, when he was only at the elementary level, he had helped Yi Xian shatter the restrictive shield of the altar in the depths of the Weeping Soul Cave under the Devil Mountain Star, allowing him to obtain the Weeping Soul blood horn that had later been used for many miraculous feats. At that time, Yi Xian's psychic power was only at the 4th level. Now, Yi Xian's psychic power had reached the 7th level, and the Annihilation Spear had also been upgraded from the elementary level to the intermediate level, so its power was bound to be even more terrifying. At least in Yi Xian's opinion, it should be no problem at all to shatter this bald monk's protective Buddhist light. Run my ass. Did this young master say something like that? After rolling his eyes and retorting, Yi Xian grinned and said something that confused everyone. But since you're so considerate, this young master won't argue with you. Also, thank you. At the same time, he had already activated the psychic power in his sea of consciousness with all his might. In the next instant, the psychic power source core that was suspended in the air above his sea of consciousness suddenly started to rotate faster and faster, pouring out a large amount of psychic power that rapidly converged and compressed above Yi Xian's sea of consciousness. In the short span of a breath, the level 7 psychic power pouring out from the psychic power source core had reached a terrifying level. This meant that Yi Xian's psychic power source core had already evolved to the 7th level, and the total amount of psychic power had skyrocketed several times compared to before. Otherwise, this level of consumption would have been a huge burden for him. In the blink of an eye, a small psychic bundle formed by the extreme compression of a large amount of psychic origin energy had already formed. Without any delay, it instantly shot out from his sea of consciousness like an infinitely dense and heavy strand of hair toward Wu Chunzi, who was suspended in mid-air in front of him. Sizzle. This annihilation, which was condensed from a large amount of level 7 psychic power, was too thin. It was concentrated like a strand of hair, and its density was so great that it made one's hair stand on end. However, its diameter was so small that it was negligible. At this moment, the source core in Yi Xian's brain was urged to shoot out with all its might. Because its speed was too fast, although it made a sharp sound as it tore through the air, it didn't last long because it had already arrived in front of Wu Chunzi in the blink of an eye and hit its target. Whoosh, a soft sound like mercury spilling over the ground was heard. The hazy layer of protective purple-gold Buddhist light on the surface of Wu Chunzi's body collapsed and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The purple-gold bowl that was suspended above his head was obviously affected as well. Its brilliance immediately dimmed, and its energy field seemed to have been thrown into disorder and was no longer under control. It directly fell down and smashed into Wu Chunzi's shiny head with a bang. An extremely eye-catching bulge quickly rose up. This head was really hard. The sound of the purple-gold bowl smashing down was actually like the sound of metal clashing. Even Yi Xian was a little surprised. He stared at the big bulge on Wu Chunzi's head for a moment, then shook his head and sighed. Could it be that your Buddhist sect's ancestor's head is full of bulges? Could it be that this is how it came to be? I have to say, the Buddhist sect is indeed the Buddhist sect. Not to mention other things for the time being, this melon is really not an ordinary porcelain head. TSK, it's passed down from one generation to another. No wonder. Pfft, just as Yi Xian's voice sounded, Wu Chunzi, whose body's protective Buddhist light had collapsed, opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. The annihilation spear was condensed from a large amount of pure level 7 psychic power. Other than the slight sound of it breaking through the air when it was shot out, there were no traces to be found. He simply couldn't dodge it. Chapter 33-28. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation AO. At this moment, a bloody hole that was much thinner than a toothpick appeared in the middle of Wu Chunzi's chest. It was bright from the front to the back. This was the result of the annihilation spear piercing through his body. Although the hole was so small that it almost didn't exist, more than half of the huge spiritual power contained in it quickly spread after entering the body. It was eroding Wu Chunzi's body completely, making him on the verge of collapse. The feeling of the whole body being wantonly stirred by an invisible force was really not a normal kind of pain. It made him temporarily lose his combat power. He had no time to think about it, but he couldn't. What kind of power is this? It's not the power of a cultivator's cultivation, nor the power of divine sense, nor the power of the body's qi and blood. It's more like spiritual power. Forcibly enduring the invisible force raging in his body like a violent hurricane, Wu Chunzi was in so much pain that his face twitched. His shiny forehead with a big bump was covered with fine beads of sweat. He stared fiercely at Yi Xian and gritted his teeth. At the end of his words, his eyes burst with light as if he finally understood. He gasped and suddenly exclaimed, "Yes, it's definitely spiritual power. Ling Huchong, you're not a human, no matter how one listened to it, it was incomparably awkward. Wu Chen's original intention was to say that Yi Xian wasn't a human, but a devil cultivator. However, the shock in his heart was too strong. It came so suddenly that he didn't even care about the measures of his words. "You're not a human. You're a damn bald thief." Yi Xian understood what he meant, but he was still angry in his heart. He immediately made a decision and cursed back loudly. At this time, the more than 20 young geniuses behind Wu Chenzi finally realized what had happened. Their bodies shook violently, and they exclaimed again. "I seem to have missed something. Wu Chenzi's state is a bit strange. Why did that layer of hazy purple gold protective Buddha's light suddenly collapse? It's not just the protective Buddha's light collapsing. Could it be that you are cross-eyed?" Even the purple gold Buddhist alms bowl that was hovering above his head was controlled and fell to the ground. What's on top of Wu Chenzi's head? It's like an egg, shiny and shiny. It was actually smashed by its own Buddhist treasure. This is too strange. Who is that Ling Huchong? He attacked twice in a row. First, he made the golden dagger radiance of green robe turn around and devour him. Then, he shattered Wu Chenzi's protective Buddhist light. The big bump on his forehead was smashed out. The most important thing is that we don't know how he did it at all. Everything happened right in front of us, but we couldn't find any trace of it. Ling Huchong clearly stood in the void on the other side and didn't move at all. He defeated the two great geniuses with ease. His methods are too mysterious and creepy. Look, he's finally moved. He's waving his giant fist and smashing it towards Wu Chenzi. My God, is Wu Chenzi stupid? He didn't even try to resist and was smashed into the dust by his fist. Too savage. This is simply a mecha god of death. Even Wu Chenzi was shocked by this murderous aura. I don't even have the desire to fight back. Run, the mecha killing god is coming this way, not far in the front. After rolling his eyes and replying to Wu Chenzi, Yi Xian didn't hesitate anymore. His figure flashed, and the mecha giant that was 10 feet tall swept in front of Wu Chenzi in the blink of an eye. Without saying a word, the terrifying giant fist that was not much smaller than a water tank smashed towards Wu Chenzi's face. Boom! Ow! A heavy sound that made one's scalp tingle was heard, followed by a long and mournful wolf howl from Wu Chenzi's throat. In the face of this terrifying giant fist that was several times thicker than his body, Wu Chenzi couldn't resist it at all without the protection of the Buddhist light. With one punch, 50 to 60% of the bones in his body were broken, and a large number of bloody wounds burst out of his body. Blood mist splashed out, and his whole body almost exploded. In the midst of the miserable howl, his body also quickly fell to the ground below, following in the footsteps of the man in green robe before him. Before the appearance of the fallen devil's son and the witch dust maiden, Wu Chenzi, who was known as one of the cultivation camp's top 10 prodigies, should not have been so weak and couldn't even withstand a single blow. The key was that the purple gold alms bowl that he was extremely confident in, which he had always relied on as a protective treasure, was too disappointing this time. Not only did the protective Buddhist light that poured out collapse in an instant, but it also directly landed on his head, smashing a big bump. For Wu Chenzi, who had always been proud and liked to show off even though he was a disciple of a Buddhist disciple, this was already bad enough. In addition, at this moment, the 7th level spiritual power was still raging and surging in his body, mercilessly torturing every inch of his flesh and blood cells. At this moment, he was completely out of shape and had never been so weak before. Therefore, he was so easily knocked down by Yi Xian's punch. He howled and fell to the ground below with his eyes rolled back, so it's a wild wolf wearing a kasaya. He usually pretends to be a human, but when he's beaten up, he howls and reveals everything. This is really a Buddhist misfortune. Ha ha ha. After knocking Wu Chenzi down to the ground with one punch, Yi Xian was very satisfied. He raised his head and laughed, then turned his head to look at the void slightly further away. In his line of sight, the 20 or so heavens prides from various sects who had been following behind Wu Chenzi and the green-robed man had turned deathly pale and scattered like birds and beasts with a loud rumble. This group of people was scared out of their wits. Wu Chenzi and the green-robed man were the strongest existences in their group, and their skills were even more extraordinary. Unexpectedly, they were knocked down to the ground by their opponents in a single blow. The key was how they did all this, and they still did not understand until now. This kind of strangeness was terrifying. At this moment, these 20 or so prodigies of the cultivation camp had already lost their fighting spirit. The only thought in their minds was to leave this area as soon as possible. Their opponents were too ferocious, too abnormal, simply inhuman. Don't be in such a hurry to leave. Weren't all of you majestic and boundless just now? Yi Xian's figure flashed, and he directly chased after them. His hearty laughter sounded again. Don't worry. This young master has always convinced people with virtue, so I won't do anything to you. At least I can guarantee that I will definitely not beat the shit out of you. Ha ha ha. Boom. Ayo. Before the loud laughter fell, Yi Xian had already caught up with one of them. His giant fist casually blasted out, and the other party instantly spat out blood. When his body fell, the familiar wolf howl also sounded at the right time. Facing all of this, the 8 fellows that Yi Xian had captured earlier looked at each other from afar. They looked at each other in shock. The thought of escaping that had always existed in their hearts finally dissipated at this moment. This guy is too ferocious. He's simply a god of death. The key is that he's so shameless. He's already so violent, but he still hoots about using virtue to convince people with a straight face, seeing the pitiful fellows in the distance who were fleeing like birds and beasts, and in the blink of an eye, a second one was blasted to the ground and let out the same mournful wolf howl without suspense. One of the 8 people's faces turned pale as he sucked in a breath of cold air. He weakly said to the other 7 brothers in the same boat, "We really can't afford to offend this kind of ferocious and shameless guy. It's better to obediently stay here. If we don't escape and get caught again, we'll most likely break our throats from crying." Chapter 33-29. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. The Joint Fleet has arrived. Boom. Ka-cha-cha. Awoo. The glazed armor, which was as big as a small mountain, was like a god descending from the heavens. Its speed was so fast that it turned into a streak of purple light that was as fast as a meteor. It wandered in all directions, and when it got close, it would directly punch out. Now, this was the 20th time that Yi Xian had attacked. From the beginning of the chase until now, he had completed it in just over a minute. The undying glazed armor, which was a quasi-starry sky-level treasure, was too amazing. The second mecha form even had an antimatter kinetic propulsion device. Once it was activated, Yi Xian's speed would be doubled. However, this group of geniuses from the various sects of the cultivation camp had long since lost their will to fight when they saw the cyan-robed man and Wu Chenzi being defeated in an instant. Once Yi Xian caught up to them and threw a punch at them, they didn't encounter any resistance at all. After the last punch, the same sound of bones cracking resounded. Yi Xian had already gotten used to it. What followed was a howl of a wolf. The 24th heaven's pride from the cultivation camp fell to the ground with a pale face. At this point, this hunting team had been completely annihilated. If they were to include the 8 people from the previous team, Yi Xian would have already captured 32 prisoners of war. Their identities and backgrounds were all extraordinary. If they were to be strung together, they would at least have the effect of a protective talisman. But this was not enough. According to his plan, he would not let go of anyone who entered the space inside Shinnom's treasure cauldron. There were still 4 hunting teams to be dealt with. I will give you 30 minutes to heal your wounds. Since you are prisoners of war, you have to follow behind me and fight with me. Those who have not recovered their mobility after 30 minutes will be killed without mercy. Standing a kilometer in the air, Yi Xian looked around and glanced at the 24 prisoners on the ground below. He said the same words as before. Not far away, the 8 people who were captured by Yi Xian in the first batch had already slipped over. At this time, they were already convinced. Although Yi Xian's cultivation was only at the 9th realm, origin 7th stage, after putting on this amazing quasi-starry sky-level treasure armor, his actual combat strength had completely surpassed that of an origin realm cultivator. He could already fight against existences in the grotto heaven realm. In the face of such an existence, they had no resistance at all. Previously, they had thought that this was just a hunt. Now, they knew that this was just serving. After realizing this, the 8 people unconsciously changed their mentality. They probably felt that at least they belonged to the same technological faction as young Master Linghu. Moreover, they were the first batch of prey to be captured. At least, they felt more superior than the group of geniuses from the cultivation faction who had just finished their battle. Therefore, after the 8 people rushed over, they first nodded and smiled at Yi Xian. Then, they spread out, puffed out their chests, and shouted at the geniuses from the cultivation faction who were still dawdling on the ground. They were all acting like qualified lackeys. Wu Chenzi and the other geniuses from the cultivation faction were gnashing their teeth, but there was nothing they could do. Not bad, not bad. You guys are finally enlightened. Yi Xian was extremely satisfied when he saw these 8 fellows being so tactful. He nodded his head in praise. Since that's the case, then this young master will not take away the cultivation resources in your battle weapons and storage magic treasures. From now on, you will be the 8 great Vajra of this young master's captive camp, including these 24 fellows. After that, all the captives will be under your management. If anyone dares to disagree, just report it. I'll give them another punch. Yi Xian's last few words were clearly meant for Wu Chenzi and the others. It was meant to be a warning. However, in the ears of the 8 great Vajras, it was no different from heavenly music. They were instantly overjoyed and repeatedly flattered him. Then, the 8 people quickly got into their roles. After they spread out, they kept shouting and looting all the storage magic treasures in the hands of the 24 geniuses from the cultivation faction. They even found the golden bow and purple gold bowl that had fallen into the dust during the previous battle and respectfully handed them to Yi Xian. Sure enough, they're all fat sheep. Why didn't I think of this before? This is the rhythm of getting rich overnight. Looking at the small pile of storage magic treasures in front of him, Yi Xian used his divine sense to scan them. When he saw the cultivation resources, elixir refinement materials, and equipment forging materials, he couldn't help but be speechless and praise them. These people were all from the cultivation faction and were like the successors of various sections. Although the resources in their hands were far inferior to Yi Xian's, because of the difference in location, there were some things that even Yi Xian didn't have. Therefore, even he was surprised by the harvest this time and was very satisfied. Apart from the cultivation resources, elixir refinement materials, and equipment forging materials, the finished magic treasures were not satisfactory. Out of all the defensive and offensive magic treasures of the 24 geniuses, only the golden bow and purple gold bowl caught Yi Xian's eyes. They were perfect starry sky epic grade magic treasures. All of them were stored in Yi Xian's undying world with a wave of his hand. Wu Chenzi, Green Robe, and the others were gnashing their teeth. In the blink of an eye, they were poor. Not only did all their cultivation resources fall into the hands of the enemy, even their defensive and offensive magic treasures were all confiscated. Not a single one was left. This time, they suffered a great loss. After the time it takes to burn an incense stick, everyone regained their ability to move. Among them, a few geniuses, such as Wu Chenzi and Green Robe, had even recovered half of their combat strength. Yi Xian waved his hand and led this group of people to set off again. There were still 4 hunting teams to deal with. In the void of the universe outside the Shenong Cauldron, the young geniuses of the major forces and sects of the human clan had been in the space inside the cauldron for some time, but at this moment, no news came out. Gong Wuxin, the last disciple of the master of the Ground Extinction Palace, from the cultivation camp, had the crystal ball echo technique, which could transmit everything that happened inside the cauldron, but for some reason, it had not been used yet. Just as the experts of the major forces waiting outside the space trap formation were getting impatient, in the void of the universe in a certain direction in the distance, a small fortress with a diameter of 50,000 meters was sailing over at this moment. A huge blood-red bull head was etched on the hull of the ship. This was the barbarian bull clan from the Federation of the Second Universe. Following this small fortress, more than a dozen space fortresses appeared. They were also from the Federation of the Second Universe, including the Enji clan, the Wood Spirit clan, and other top-ranking clans in the Second Universe. Seeing the arrival of the joint fleet of the various clans of the Second Federation, all the experts of the human clan around, including Jean-E, who was in charge of the external affairs of the space trap formation, turned their heads to look, but no one made a sound. After all, Jean-E had said before that Ling Huchong had committed many evil deeds, and everyone had the right to punish him. Although the Barbarian Bull clan came from the Second Universe, they were also one of the clans of the Federation. It was normal for them to come this time to get a share of the pie. Chapter 3330. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Crystal Ball Shadow. Soon, the Alliance fleet from the Second Universe stopped in the void far away from the space trap array and occupied a direction. Then, the main passageways of all the small fortresses and space fortresses in the fleet opened, and several powerhouses rushed out. This fleet was basically composed of the top Federation clans in the Second Universe. This time, they came to fight for the Shinong Cauldron, and they could even secretly fight for the peerless genius of the human race, Ling Huchong. Therefore, any of the clans of the Federation had sent out their high-level elders, and at the same time, some powerful young juniors. Some of these high-level elders knew Jean-E of the Heavenly War Empire. At this moment, after they rushed out of the battleship, they greeted him one after another and asked him about the situation. Then, a foreign hunting team formed by the young juniors of the various clans of the Federation of the Second Universe was formed. There were a total of 13 people, and their strength was extraordinary. Their cultivation was at the 9th realm, the peak of the 9th level, the origin. Among them, the most eye-catching were the young patriarch of the Enji clan, Ji Jinghong, the young protagonist of the Barbarian Bull clan, Jin Haoyan, the young master of the Golden Eagle clan, Princess Medusa of the Colorful Python clan, and Lang Ganglai, the descendant of the Greedy Wolf clan. After you enter the space inside the cauldron, if you meet Gong Wuxin of the Diju Palace, remember to ask him to use the crystal ball shadow technique to transmit the image in the cauldron in real time, especially after you find Ling Huchong and before you launch a full-scale attack on him. Jean-E was floating in the void, sitting cross-legged, nodding and greeting the high-level elders of the various clans of the Second Universe. Then, he glanced at Ji Jinghong and the other 13 heavenly legends of the other universe. He seemed to be extremely confident and resolute as he continued with a faint smile, that Brad is arrogant and unruly, but he will definitely not be able to escape this time. Although we are restricted by the rules of this King Cauldron's own domain and cannot enter to personally suppress him, we cannot miss such a delightful scene. Remember this. In this regard, whether it was the elites of the various races of the Federation of the Second Universe who had just arrived or the large number of powerhouses of the human clan who were waiting in the surrounding void, they all deeply agreed and nodded. No one felt that Jean-E was bragging. After all, although he, Jean-Er, Jean-Si, and the other Heavenly Battle Emperor clan elders had been heavily abused by Yi Xian, with 1 dead and 3 injured, they had been taught a painful lesson. However, that was only because Yi Xian had taken out the Shinong Cauldron and relied on it to suppress others. Now that the giant cauldron had been summoned and the person had entered the cauldron, everyone felt that no matter how strong Yi Xian was, he would not be able to escape from the joint attack of more than 200 young prodigies from various clans. Indeed, this scene should not be missed. It would definitely be very exciting. As Ji Jinghong and the other 13 heavenly legends from the Second Universe entered the cauldron, all the experts who stayed in the void outside the array eagerly anticipated the scene. They wanted to see Yi Xian being suppressed as soon as possible. In the cauldron's space. After suppressing the 2 hunting teams, Yi Xian led the 32 heavens chosen captives behind him to move again. Then, they encountered another hunting team. And this time, the remaining 4 hunting teams all arrived at the same time. The battle that had happened here before had already attracted the attention of the other hunting teams who were in charge of searching in other directions. They hurried over, but unfortunately, Yi Xian was too fast. Before they arrived, the battle had already ended. At this moment, the remaining 4 hunting teams were occupying the surrounding space, surrounding Yi Xian and the 32 heavens chosen captives behind him. When these guys saw that even Wu Chenzi had been captured and was now following behind Yi Xian with his head lowered in shame and anger, they were all shocked. Even so, they still did not think that they would follow in Wu Chenzi's footsteps. After all, the total number of people in the 4 hunting teams was more than 100. In their opinion, no matter how amazing this young master Ling Hu's skills were, it was impossible for him to turn the tables. Since he was already surrounded by 4 hunting teams, his fate was sealed. Among the 4 hunting teams, the purplish warbler, Duanmu Xiaocha, and Zhao Qianru occupied one side. Behind them were basically all heavenly legends from the technology faction. They had the most people, nearly 50 of them. Dongfang Lin and the other experts in his team were also among them. This group of people had fled after the battle with Yi Xian. When they encountered the purplish warbler and the others, they gathered together. In the end, they still did not give up. They wanted to wait until they had enough people before making a move on Yi Xian. In their opinion, the time had come. The other 3 teams had fewer people, each with only 20 or so people. There were experts from both the cultivation faction and the technology faction, and the leaders were from the cultivation faction. They were as famous as Wu Chenzi, Gong Wuxin, Chou Doufu, and Yu Xianlong. At this moment, the 3 of them had ugly expressions on their faces. Amongst the younger generation geniuses of the cultivation camp, the 3 of them were called the 4 heroes along with the Buddhist sect's Wu Chenzi. Now that Wu Chenzi had been captured by Yi Xian, there was actually a large bump on his shiny head that looked like a baby's fist. He looked extremely miserable, and this was simply slapping their faces. Although the 3 of them were angry at Wu Chenzi for being useless, they hated Yi Xian even more. Once this matter was spread out, people would definitely talk behind their backs. It did not matter if the reputation of the 4 heroes of cultivation was ruined, but the problem was that the 3 of them were implicated and left a stain on their reputation. Ling Huchong, don't make a mistake. After all, you are also a human expert. Although the reputation of being a peerless monster is a bit exaggerated, you are still a rare genius of the younger generation. As long as you swear an oath to join the Tenju Heavenly Palace and serve us wholeheartedly, the Tenju Heavenly Palace will help you deal with the aftermath of the conflict with the Heaven Battle Emperor clan. Gong Wuxin was the first to speak. He said these words to Yi Xian, but it seemed that he did not mean it. This was the mission of the Tenju Heavenly Palace. If it were him, he would definitely take the opportunity to get rid of the other party. What peerless monster! Gong Wuxin was not convinced at all and had a strong hostility. Bah, what is the Tenju Heavenly Palace? Are you worthy of this young master swearing an oath of loyalty? Could it be that you're still sleep-talking? Yi Xian sneered and retorted with no trace of politeness. It would have been better if the other party did not mention the Tenju Heavenly Palace. Yi Xian's attitude was not so bad. Now that the other party mentioned the Tenju Heavenly Palace, it was as if the anger in Yi Xian's heart had been ignited. This young master will also give you a piece of advice. You'd better hand over your storage magic treasure immediately and surrender. Otherwise, you will be suppressed on the spot. Pooh! Gong Wuxin was so angry that he was about to vomit blood. He had suppressed the anger in his heart and tried to persuade the other party, but in the end, he was threatened and asked to surrender his storage magic treasure in front of everyone. This was simply unreasonable. Thinking of this, Gong Wuxin was so angry that he laughed. Ling Huchong, good. Today, I want to see who will be suppressed. Speaking of this, Gong Wuxin seemed to have suddenly thought of something, and a ferocious expression appeared on his face. Humph, aren't you very arrogant? I will fulfill your wish and let the whole world know the truth of this battle. The experts of the 3 great universes will see how you are suppressed by me. Chapter 33-31. It's too cruel. The crystal ball mirage technique was an auxiliary Taoist technique. Although it did not possess any offensive power, it was a technique that allowed one to condense a crystal ball using one's divine ability. It could project all the sights and sounds on the other side of the isolated plane and void. It was said that when this divine ability was cultivated to a high level, one could even see the secrets of the heavens and see the past and the future. It was incomparably mysterious. Even in the human clan's cultivation camp, only the overlord of cultivation, Tenju Heavenly Palace, still retained the cultivation method of this mystic technique, and there were not many people who cultivated it, only a dozen people in each generation. Gong Wuxin was the last disciple of the palace master of the Earth Palace, the second palace of the 10 absolute heavenly palaces. There was no doubt about his talent. Although he had not been cultivating the crystal ball mirage technique for a long time, he had already reached a higher level and could be considered to have made some achievements. At this moment, as Gong Wuxin shouted, a silvery white light rushed out of his body and soared into the sky like a meteor. It hung 10,000 meters above the space inside the cauldron and turned into a transparent silver ball about a meter in diameter. It poured out a faint moonlight. This kind of technique was very mysterious. At first glance, it didn't look like a technique at all. Instead, it looked like a silver-white spherical magic weapon. It attracted Yi Xian's interest and he looked over. Then, he grinned and pointed at the sky, saying to Gong Wuxin, "Crystal ball mirage?" In other words, everything that happens in the space within the cauldron can be transmitted out through this silver ball of light, and can be seen by the people outside? This is really interesting. Are you a pervert? While he was talking, Yi Xian suddenly dashed out. His combat suit more than 10 meters tall turned into a purple arrow and reached Gong Wuxin in the blink of an eye. He punched out. "You are being abused, and yet you are making a crystal ball to transmit the video of the scene. What a unique hobby you have." Bang! Ka-cha-cha! Awoo! As soon as Yi Xian finished speaking, a huge bang rang out, followed by the sound of many bones breaking. After that, Gong Wuxin spat out a mouthful of blood and let out a familiar mournful howl. His speed was simply too fast. Before his figure rushed out, he had already secretly stored up energy and activated the antimatter propulsion system of the glazed mech suit, instantly increasing his speed by 2 times. Under such extreme speed and the distance between them was not too far, Gong Wuxin could not react at all. In fact, not only Gong Wuxin, but all the experts in the other 3 directions of the void were the same. The purplish warbler, Duanmu Xiaocha, and Zhao Qianru were dumbfounded, but they did not make a move. These people were all young prodigies from the cultivation camp. Now that the relationship between the 2 camps was tense, these young prodigies from the technology camp were hostile to Gong Wuxin and the other prodigies from the cultivation camp. Although Linghu Chong was arrogant and unruly, the Linghu family was one of the most powerful families in the technology camp. Therefore, when they saw the prodigies from the cultivation camp attacking him, these experts from the technology camp were subconsciously unwilling to help. In addition, the 3 girls from the purplish warbler did not say anything, so these experts from the technology camp all stood in place, unmoved. Chou Doufu and Yu Xianlong, who were guarding the other 2 directions, did the same. They did not belong to the same sect as Gong Wuxin. The former came from the Tenju Celestial Palace, the overlord of the cultivation camp. Since he said that he was going to fight Yi Xian alone, Chou Doufu and Yu Xianlong naturally would not act rashly. This was a thankless task, so it was completely unnecessary. Even if they wanted to encircle and annihilate Gong Wuxin, they would have to wait until the end of this battle. Only the 20 or so people who belonged to the same hunting team as Gong Wuxin saw that the former was actually ambushed by Yi Xian. They were caught off guard and instantly disintegrated their combat strength. Their entire bodies collapsed, and they were instantly filled with shock and anger. They roared as they charged towards Yi Xian, taking out all sorts of magic treasures and wildly bombarding him. Spiritual crush. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian sneered and muttered in a voice that only he could hear. At the same time, the spiritual power source core in his mind began to operate rapidly again. A formless wave of level 7 spiritual power instantly spread out like a tsunami, directly enveloping the 20 or so experts from the cultivation camp who were rushing toward him. Spiritual crush was a secret spiritual technique that used spiritual power to attack the mind. Compared to the spiritual power attacks of human cultivators, spiritual power was more traceless, so it was basically impossible to guard against. At least, it was true for human powerhouses. As the spiritual energy enveloped them, the 20 or so figures that were charging towards Yi Xian suddenly froze. Their consciousnesses had all fallen into a trance, as if they'd been bewitched. Yi Xian's spiritual crush had only been at the intermediate level before, but now it was at the advanced level. In addition, his spiritual power source core had just undergone another transformation and evolution, so the spiritual power surging out of it had reached level 7, so its power had doubled. Therefore, even though these people were all at the late stage of the origin stage, level 8, or even level 9, which made them stronger than Yi Xian, they were still caught off guard and fell into a trance. Although this trance might not last for too long, it was enough for Yi Xian. Boom! Bang! Bang! Crack! Crack! Awoo! Awoo! Taking advantage of this opportunity, Yi Xian's figure shot out once again, and in a split second, he rushed into the crowd. Every time he simply swung his fist, there would be a huge bang and a bone-chilling sound of bone cracking, followed by a mournful howl of a wolf. Each scream was louder than the last. In the blink of an eye, the 20 or so powerhouses from the cultivation camp who had fallen into a trance were lying on the ground in disarray. This scene was too shocking. At least, the 100 or so powerhouses in the other 3 directions did not expect this. Even if Yi Xian was wearing a stunning glass armor, his combat strength should not be so abnormal to such an extent. One had to know that these 20-odd cultivators were all the top geniuses of the various sects, and their cultivations were all at the 8th or 9th level of the origin realm. But now, they were like a flock of lambs, being charged into the flock by Yi Xian, the ferocious wolf. After wreaking havoc, not a single one of them resisted. It was so strange that it was unbelievable. In the blink of an eye, the 20 or so people had their bones and tendons broken and fell into the dust. The only figure that was still standing in the void was Yi Xian, who was about 30 meters tall and looked like a god in purple armor. Chou Doufu and Yu Xianlong opened their mouths wide and muttered to themselves with a solemn expression. How can this be? It's too strange. No one fought back. How did he do it? There's a mystery behind this. What other secret methods does this kid have? Chapter 33-32. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Challenging and Aragong Wuxin was known as the leader of the 4 heroes of the human race, but at this moment, he was crushed by Yi Xian in front of nearly 200 human race powerhouses. Gong Wuxin's accidental stumble could be attributed to Yi Xian's sudden sneak attack, but the 20 or so human race powerhouses who were crushed right after him were absolutely crushed by Yi Xian in a direct confrontation. They even seized the initiative. The 20 or so human race powerhouses attacked at the same time. They had already taken out their magic weapons, and their cultivation levels were generally higher than Yi Xian's, but the final result was still as expected. The 20 or so human race powerhouses were crushed in less than a minute. All of this shocked everyone. Even the purplish warbler, Duanmu Xiaocha, and Zhao Qianru were dumbfounded. They knew that Yi Xian was a monster, but they didn't expect him to be so terrifyingly strong. He was simply a ferocious monster. As for the more than 50 young prodigies from the various major clans behind them, their bodies trembled violently as they sucked in cold breaths of air. At this moment, Chou Doufu and Yu Xianlong finally understood why Wu Qin, who was also one of the 4 young heroes of the cultivation camp, was suppressed by Yi Xian. Previously, they felt that they had lost face, but now, they no longer felt that way. Even Gong Wuxin, the leader of the 4 heroes, was defeated, let alone Wu Qinzi. After this battle, the so-called 4 heroes of the human race had completely become history. In the future, when people mentioned this once famous name, they would most likely feel that it wasn't true. Only Wu Qinzi and the others had already suffered a great loss at Yi Xian's hands. At this moment, just like him, the 32 captives that were surrounded by the remaining 4 hunting teams felt an inexplicable sense of relief in their hearts. They did feel humiliated and hated Yi Xian, but when they saw that even Gong Wuxin was suppressed in an instant, the humiliation in their hearts naturally faded away. At this moment, even Yi Xian seemed to be more pleasing to the eye in their eyes. After all, the way Gong Wu Xian and the others looked at them when they were surrounded by the 4 teams was very irritating. But now, this guy was finally suppressed by Yi Xian in an instant. There was no suspense at all. It was simply too satisfying. There's something strange about this brat. Gong Wu Xian didn't even have a chance to use his techniques before he was suppressed. Presumably, Wu Chenzi is also in the same situation. We can't let this continue. Otherwise, we'll be defeated one by one. Yu Xianlong's eyes flashed and she suddenly shouted, "Everyone, let's attack together and suppress Ling Huchong first." Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, an invisible and strange aura suddenly surged out from his body. The air trembled slightly, and like an incomparably heavy ripple, it surged out from his body. More than 100 translucent egg-sized balls instantly appeared around him, and whooshing sounds rang out endlessly as they all shot towards Yi Xian. Heavy water, true thunder. Once it did, a small part of the void would collapse. Wu Chenzi, what are you waiting for? Have you lost all will to fight after being floated up? Everyone, let's attack together. Chou Doufu also roared at this moment. His eyes first swept toward Wu Chenzi and the 8 great guardian deities behind Yi Xian. At the same time, he raised his right hand and pointed at Yi Xian from afar, void fusion finger. Rumble, at this moment, a large amount of blue flames gushed out from Chou Doufu's body. The flames surged and roared, but there was no heat. It seemed to have frozen this part of the void. The temperature dropped by more than 10 degrees in an instant. There were already faint cracking sounds on the ground below, and some puddles began to freeze. At the same time, as he raised his hand and pointed at Chou Doufu's position, a blue line condensed from the void rapidly shot toward Yi Xian. This scene was too strange. Anyone who saw it could instantly understand that if this blue line of ice came into contact with their body, even a starry sky expert would instantly be turned into an ice sculpture. The nearly 50 starry sky experts behind the two of them also made their move at this moment. Among them, in addition to the prodigies of the various sects from the cultivation camp, there were also some experts from the technology camp. However, they were from other fields and were not familiar with the top gene fluid families, so they did not team up with the purplish warbler and the others. At this moment, they also made their move. For a moment, more than 50 experts rushed toward Yi Xian at the same time. Their momentum rose to the sky, and a small part of the void was covered by the dazzling light of various artifacts. Yi Xian, who was in the middle of this light curtain, was completely submerged. The 50 experts of the technology camp behind the 3 purplish warbler girls were also moved. They could see that Yi Xian seemed to be doomed this time. He was already submerged in the dazzling light of the artifacts. There was no way for him to escape. The 50 people all looked at the 3 purplish warbler girls. After all, this hunting team was led by the captive girl. The purplish warbler rolled her eyes. What are you looking at? I'm not feeling well today. I'm just here to watch the fun. If you want to fight, do as you please. Zhao Qianru also nodded. That's right. I'm the same. I won't get involved in a girl's fight. I'm just here to be a bystander. Duanmu Xiaocha was even more ruthless. She directly raised her hand and stroked her small belly. She frowned and said, "Don't look at me. I'm having a stomachache today. I can't move around." In the end, the 50 experts of the technology camp behind the 3 girls all rushed out one after another and joined the encirclement. This was a rare opportunity, and they didn't want to miss it. When young Master Ling Hu was suppressed later, all the aristocratic families and sects that had juniors from their clans who had fought before could rightfully jump out and ask for a share of the benefits. In the blink of an eye, the number of geniuses from the various clans that were rushing towards Yi Xian at the same time had already exceeded 100. The glass armor that was like a small mountain had already been completely drowned out by the endless brilliance of magic treasures. Seeing this scene, Wu Chenzi and the others who were behind Yi Xian and weren't affected by the light curtain of the artifacts showed hesitation on their faces. In their opinion, no matter how strong Yi Xian was, he was probably going to be suppressed this time. There was probably no way he could turn the situation around. Even the 8 great guardian deities were a little hesitant. Their eyes flickered with uncertainty, and they were in a dilemma. But in the end, they didn't make a move. Wu Chenzi gritted his teeth and squeezed out a sentence from his mouth. This little monk has not recovered from his serious injuries. I want to fight, but it's a pity that I don't have the strength. The 8 great guardian deities rolled their eyes. This was clearly the rhythm of not wanting to take the risk of getting a few more big bumps on their heads. He actually said it in such a dignified manner. He was indeed a bald thief. Peace of mind. As soon as Wu Chunzi finished speaking, a violent roar suddenly came from the center of the void that was enveloped by the light of the artifacts. It was Yi Xian's voice. Then, a strange scene appeared. The 8 great guardian deities and the other 32 prisoners of war subconsciously turned to look. What they saw instantly shocked them. Chapter 33:33. Eyeballs all over the floor. This was a divine ability that Yi Xian had inherited from the mutated demonic dragon bloodline. In the legends of the primordial era, the demon dragon was actually the torch dragon, also known as the torch dragon, also known as the torch dragon, or the torch dragon. Legend has it that it had a human face and a dragon's body. It held a candle in its mouth, illuminating the dark and gloomy places in the northwest where there was no sun. It was said that its power was extremely great. When it opened its eyes, the whole sky was bright, which was the day. When it closed its eyes, the sky was dark, which was the night. His peace is darkness, his vision is light. He was referring to Torch Dragon. It was a simple name, but the aura and majesty it exuded was fascinating. To put it bluntly, it meant that when one opens one's eyes, it is day, when one closes one's eyes, it is night. The entire world, such a vast world, was decided by the simple opening of a living creature's eyes. This kind of saying was a little too exaggerated and mysterious. It was indeed hard for people to accept. But at this moment, the scene in front of Wu Chunzi was clearly so. Phew! As Yi Xian's light shout faded away, a low hiss quickly sounded out from the area where the brilliance of the magic treasure was wreaking havoc. Although the sound didn't have an imposing aura, nor did it have a soul-stirring might, as the strange hiss entered his ears, Wu Chun clearly felt his primordial spirit tremble slightly. A throbbing and uneasiness that came from the depths of his soul caused his expression to change once again. Although this strange sound was obscure, the pressure was as if the will of heaven and earth in this entire universe was whispering. Although it was still Yi Xian's voice, it revealed an inexplicable ancient aura. At the same time, a green and hazy brilliance suddenly leaked out like a rainbow. That void was originally enveloped by the endless radiance of the magic treasures, but at this moment, as the green light rushed up from the central area of the magic treasure light screen, it actually spread across the heavens and the earth in an instant. The originally radiant magic treasure light screen completely dimmed, and then fell into the void one after another. Even the 100 or so starry sky powerhouses, including Chou Do-fu and Yu Xianlong, who were originally rushing over and had already surrounded the Dharma treasure light curtain, suddenly stopped at this moment. Everyone seemed to have fallen into an incomparably sticky quagmire in an instant. A painful expression appeared on their faces. Their bodies struggled in the void, trying to break free from some invisible shackles, but it was futile. Don't worry. This young Lord Yi Xian translation, Lord Yi Xian editor, translation, boom. Ka-cha-cha-cha. Awu, as Yi Xian's voice sounded out once more, a loud sound followed. It was accompanied by the sound of bones shattering and an incomparably mournful howl of a wolf. One after another, the sound reverberated in the air without end, the universe void outside the Shinnon cauldron. Half a day had passed, but the star field where the space trap array was located did not become quiet. Instead, as time went by, it became even more lively. The fleets and starry sky powerhouses that had gathered here before did not leave. They were ready to make a move, and they were planning something, or they were just here to watch the show. The Zhan Tu ancestor of the Emperor clan who went to visit friends still had not returned, and the two peerless geniuses of the human science and technology camp, Fairy Inxia and Xiaoyao Zi, had not yet appeared. As for the small fortress with a diameter of 50,000 meters from the first universe, it was also still on its way. The young clan leader Ji Jinghong of the Yinji clan, young master Ritian of the barbarian Bull clan, young master Jin Haoyan of the Golden Eagle clan, Princess Medusa of the colorful Python clan, and Lang Ganglai of the Greedy Wolf clan led the team of heavenly talents of the second universe. Not long after they entered the space inside the Shinnon cauldron, there was a sudden abnormality in the space trap array, which attracted the attention of all the powerhouses around. Whoosh, a huge sound like a waterfall suddenly poured out of the space trap array. In the void above the Shinnon cauldron, which was as huge as a star, a silver light curtain suddenly appeared without warning. Its diameter was very vast, and it was like a small sky curtain that enveloped the sky above the star cauldron. It contrasted well with the nine-colored mist that was gushing out of the star cauldron below, and it presented a dreamlike scene. All the starry sky powerhouses outside the space trap array were stunned. They did not understand what had happened, and some of them even looked suspicious. The crystal ball mirage technique? It seems that they have already met. Among the large flying magic weapons such as the huge battleships from the cultivation camp, an elder from the Earth Extinction Temple laughed loudly. This time Ling Huchong can't escape. Let's see what he chooses. I hope this kid doesn't make a mistake, ha ha ha. All the starry sky powerhouses around suddenly realized that this was the crystal ball mirage technique. It was an ancient technique from the second temple of the 10 Ju heavenly palaces, the Earth Extinction Temple. It was really extraordinary. It could break through the internal field of the giant star cauldron and transmit the image inside. It appeared in this vast silver light that was like a sky curtain. Everyone was refreshed. Finally, they didn't have to be bored anymore. They could wait and watch at the same time. At this moment, with the sudden flash of the silver light curtain like a sky curtain, there was a sudden exclamation in the void outside the space trap array. Look, the image of the silver light curtain appeared. Ling Huchong, it really is Ling Huchong. I see him. It seems that he has been besieged. The void he is in is surrounded by the powerhouses who have just entered the space inside the cauldron. Huh. That's Gong Wuxin. His momentum is amazing. He is going to make the first move. It seems that young Master Ling Hu will be suppressed soon. This time, is the Tenju Heavenly Palace of the cultivation camp going to take the lead? Alas, it's just beginning and it's going to end. I thought I could see the two universe realm powerhouses of the 15th realm take action. After all, young Master Ling Hu still hasn't grown up. After leaving the giant star cauldron, just a group of young geniuses of the same realm is enough to crush him. Yes, although he is outnumbered and suspected of being besieged, his opponent, young Master Ling Hu, is known as the peerless genius of the human clan. It's not a shame. After all, he is too arrogant. This setback should allow him to grow up. As these words sounded, the eyes of the powerhouses of the Zhan clan flashed, and they all showed a look of satisfaction. Tuoba Xiong, Gongyang Buhui, Chanyu Jingtian, Yuan Changfeng, and Old Man Xianyuan, all the masters and leaders of the 16 top families of the imperial court were relieved at the same time. Long Xiang, the crown prince of the imperial court, Zhan Lingfeng, the crown prince of the heavenly battle empire, and Su Biqing, the crown prince of the heavenly Qin kingdom, all had hideous smiles on their faces. Hong Do, Lai Feng, and the three-star general of the immortal army of the imperial court looked cold and indifferent. The 5 elders of the Yingji clan, the barbarian bull clan, the golden eagle clan, the colorful python clan, and the greedy wolf clan from the federation of the second universe frowned as they looked at each other. They didn't see Jiao Ri Tian and the other geniuses of the second universe who had just entered the Shinong giant cauldron, but the battle was going to end early. This was not good news. At the same time, the powerhouses of the other forces and clans who had been hiding in the distant void and hadn't shown themselves were also very disappointed. They hadn't had time to make a move yet. Chapter 33-34. Another invincible god of war in the silver light curtain, the purple mecha giant, as tall as a small mountain, instantly turned into a stream of light and appeared directly in front of Gong Wuxin at a speed that made everyone's heart jump. Then, it swung its giant fist, and the sound of bones cracking came out from the space trap array, making people's teeth ache. Then, a long and mournful howl sounded. Gong Wuxin, who had been seriously injured, fell to the ground below. He was seriously injured in an instant and had lost his ability to fight. Before the countless starry sky masters who were stunned by this scene could recover from their shock, the furious roars of Yu Xianlong and Chou Doufu rang out. The more than 50 heavens prides of the science and technology camp, including the purplish warbler and Duan Mushaocha, also rushed out at the same time. Over 100 powerhouses took out their respective magic treasures. For a time, a dazzling light filled the starry sky, enveloping the entire horizon. The silver light screen emitted a boundless brilliance, covering the heavens and covering the earth as it submerged the purple mecha giant like a war god. It was not until this moment that the starry sky masters around recovered from the shocking scene of Gong Wuxin being suppressed in an instant. All kinds of exclamations sounded, especially in the direction of the void where the few fleets of the cultivation camp were gathered. The sounds of cursing and reprimanding were endless, and there was even arrogant laughter mixed in. This was because after seeing Yi Xian suppress Wu Qin, he still wasn't able to escape his misfortune in the end and was drowned by the overwhelming amount of magic treasures. However, everything was not over yet. Just as the exclamation sounded from the outside world, the silver light curtain above the giant star cauldron in the space trap array changed again. A waterfall of misty green brilliance suddenly soared into the sky and spread out in an instant, dimming the brilliance of the countless magic weapons that were competing to shine and then falling to the ground. More than 100 starry sky masters who summoned these magic weapons were all frozen at the same time, as if they had fallen into a quagmire. Their faces were filled with pain as they struggled, but unfortunately, they could not break free at all. They seemed to be bound by an invisible force and could not move at all. This scene was too strange, and it happened so suddenly that the exclamations outside the void trap formation suddenly stopped, and turned into a series of gasps that sounded at the same time. In the next moment, the mecha giant, which was as tall as a small mountain, rushed into the sky. Without any hesitation, it threw a punch at the nearest starry sky master. They passed by each other, and then the next. These 100 or so starry sky powerhouses were all bound by some kind of mysterious force, unable to move at all. The following scene could no longer be described as a tiger entering a flock of sheep. If a ferocious tiger were to charge into a flock of sheep, they would at least flee in all directions, but at this moment, these starry sky masters could not even flee in horror. They could only struggle in place, unable to do anything, waiting for the two huge fists that were twice the size of a person to hit them. Ka-cha-cha. Ka-cha, the crisp sound of bones breaking rang out one after another, echoing endlessly. It came out of the void trap formation and drilled into the ears of all the powerhouses in the surrounding void. Outside the void trap formation, at this time, it was dead silent. There was not even the slightest sound of gasping. Everyone was scared out of their wits. If it was said that Yi Xian's punch had caused Wu Qin to fall to the ground because he'd taken advantage of the former surprise attack and was rather suspicious of him, then now, the terrifying battle prowess he displayed was definitely normal. 1 against 100, or even more. Moreover, it was the side with more people who made the first move. All kinds of magical weapons had already drowned Yi Xian's figure. Anyone who saw this scene would feel that he would not be able to escape. However, under such circumstances, as a beam of misty green light soared into the sky, everything changed. The side with more people, the side that made the first move, the side that used countless magical weapons to drown Yi Xian's figure, was instead being beaten up. This was simply inconceivable. What was even more unacceptable was that the reason Yi Xian was able to do this was not because of some kind of precious treasure like the giant star cauldron. The mysterious blue light that soared into the sky was clearly a kind of magical ability. No one present could understand it, but it was a super powerful magical ability with terrifying power. In an instant, it caused more than 100 magical weapons to lose their brilliance and fall to the dust. At the same time, it also instantly restrained the figures of more than 100 starry sky powerhouses who were besieging him. Even magical weapons were a part of the overall strength of a starry sky powerhouse, not to mention the magical abilities they had mastered. Facing the scene of Yi Xian beating more than 100 starry sky powerhouses by himself, no one could say anything, and no one could say anything to criticize him. The cracking sound was endless, almost without pause, but in fact, it only lasted for a short minute or so. After a minute, there were not many figures left in the silver light curtain. Apart from Yi Xian and his glass mecha, only the purplish warbler, Duan Muxiaocha, and Zhao Qianru in the distance were still standing there with their mouths wide open, as if they had seen a ghost. More than 100 besiegers, including Chou Doufu and Yu Xianlong, had all fallen to the dust. As for the 8 great guardian deities, Wu Chenzi, and more than 30 other people, they all landed on the ground below to collect the spoils of war. Seeing this scene, the same thought appeared in the minds of all the powerhouses outside the space trap array. Another invincible war god was born. This was the truly unparalleled genius of the human race. The one who was causing a ruckus on the side of the cultivators, whose identity was still unknown, was known as the invincible war god, who could rely on his own strength to fight against opponents 2 realms higher than him without being defeated, was indeed worthy of the title of the unparalleled genius of the human race. But the one in front of them was even more impressive. Previously, they thought that he was only a master of medicine, tools, and formations, but now it seemed that his own combat strength was not inferior at all. He was simply a master of both pen and sword, which was heaven-defying. A series of exclamations sounded in an instant, but the cultivators fell into silence, especially the sects behind the 8 great Vajras, including a golden arhat who represented the mysterious Buddhist sect in the cultivators' camp. Their faces were full of embarrassment. Compared to Gong Wuxin and the others who were suppressed and almost beaten to a pulp, the 8 great guardian deities and the others had clearly been subdued, which was even more embarrassing. However, the representatives and elders of the sects behind Gong Wuxin, such as Di Ju Gong, had no intention of despising them at all. Instead, they were worried, because if there were no accidents, the 100 or so people who were suppressed, including Gong Wuxin, would most likely be subdued soon like the 8 great guardian deities. Chapter 33-35. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Ransom. I am going to kill you. It was a simple sentence, but it was domineering. Most importantly, it was directed at Gong Wuxin. Gong Wuxin was the leader of the 4 heroes of the cultivation camp, the last disciple of the master of the Earth Palace, the second palace of the 10 Ultimates Heavenly Palace. But now, in front of countless masters of the starry sky, he was yelled at without any scruples. Gong Wuxin felt like he was going to explode. Especially when he remembered that he was the one who created the silver light curtain in the sky. If he didn't want to die, he would have to consume the energy in his body to maintain the light curtain, so that the masters of the starry sky outside the space trapping formation could see how he and his brothers were being tortured. What the hell was going on? He was so regretful that his intestines were turning green. Even his brain was turning green. Everything went on as usual. Yi Xian said the same thing as before, warning Gong Wuxin and the others that they could either die or regain their mobility in 30 minutes. As for their storage magic treasures and the offensive magic treasures that were knocked down to the ground by Yi Xian's demonic dragon bloodline ability, they were all collected by the 8 great Vajra and the others and delivered to Yi Xian. The latter waved his hand and didn't look at them carefully. There were too many, so he kept them all in his undying world. During this process, in addition to the 8 great guardian warriors, the bald man, Wu Chenzi, and the others also played the role of henchmen. This was because Yi Xian said that he didn't keep idle people. Either they worked or he punched them a few more times. This time, he wouldn't just beat them half to death. Under his tyrannical power, even Wu Chenzi, one of the 4 heroes of the cultivation camp, could only submit. It was foreseeable that the other 3 of the 4 heroes of the cultivation camp, including Gong Wuxin, would follow in Wu Chenzi's footsteps. All of this was seen clearly by the countless starry sky experts in the surrounding void outside the skytrapping grand array through the silver light curtain that resembled a sky canopy. The faces of the upper echelons of the various sects were red, but they were all silent, not even cursing. Because in this final battle, more than 100 young prodigies of the various sects, including Chou Dofu, had lost without any injustice. He didn't use any tricks at all. He used his own divine ability to suppress everyone. No one dared to provoke him. Even if they wanted to say some harsh words, it would be so weak. They did not speak, but Yi Xian did not hold back. After the time it took for one incense stick to burn, Yi Xian saw that a total of over 100 people had regained their ability to move. They were all looking at him with fear and resentment. Yi Xian snorted coldly and raised his hand to point at the 8 great guardian deities and began to lecture them. From now on, all of you are my captives. These are the 8 great guardian deities, your supervisors. In the future, if anyone doesn't listen to them, this young master will not say a word and directly blast him into a pile of minced meat. Hearing this, the 8 great guardian deities were immediately excited. From this moment on, the 4 heroes of cultivation were their soldiers. This was something that they had never dared to imagine before. Although they might be hated, they could explain everything by saying that they were forced to do it. They had no pressure at all. As for Cho Dofu, Gong Wuxin, and the others, on the one hand, they had not recovered from their injuries. They could not escape even if they wanted to. On the other hand, all of their treasures and cultivation resources had been taken away. Even if they wanted to resist, it was impossible. There was only one path in front of them. If they didn't want to die, they could only submit. Little brother, it was just a misunderstanding. Isn't this a bit inappropriate? As soon as Yi Xian finished speaking, Yu Xianlong spoke in a sweet voice. Her pitiful look was mesmerizing. I'm a girl. You don't seem to have a heart of stone. Shut up, you old witch. Didn't you call me a thief just now? Don't think that this young master doesn't hit women. Stay with them obediently. Otherwise, you know what will happen. Without waiting for Yu Xianlong to finish speaking, Yi Xian interrupted her with a shout. The words old witch that he blurted out almost made Yu Xianlong faint on the spot. The 3 purplish warbler girls who were standing in the void far away covered their mouths and chuckled. The 3 girls were very satisfied that Yi Xian was not charmed by Yu Xianlong, who was known as the #1 beauty in the cultivation camp. Hearing the laughter, Yi Xian remembered that there were 3 girls beside him. It seemed that dealing with them would be a bit of a headache. After frowning, he turned his head and looked over. He raised his hand and pointed at the 3 girls of the purplish warbler. He shouted, the 3 beauties over there, don't blame this young master for not warning you. If you know what's good for you, come over here immediately. This young master has already set up the field inside the giant cauldron so that you can only enter and not leave. You won't be able to escape. Seeing that you didn't make a move just now, this young master won't take away your treasures and cultivation resources. I also won't restrict you from being under the control of the 8 great Vajras. As long as you don't escape, you will have absolute freedom. If you don't know what's good for you and want to escape. You saw how this young master beat up this old witch. Don't blame me for not showing mercy. Yi Xian deliberately said this because he had no other choice. However, the effect was quite good. Although his words didn't sound very polite, the 3 girls of the purplish warbler, Duan Mushaocha, and Zhao Qianru were very satisfied. The key was the effect of calling them beauties. As for Yu Xianlong, she almost fainted from anger again. When she looked at Yi Xian, her gaze was almost as sharp as a knife. Little bastard, what's wrong with your eyes? Compared to the 3 of them, whether it's in terms of appearance, figure, or temperament, which part of me is inferior? Why is it that I'm a great beauty on their side and an old witch here? It's really driving me crazy. In the end, the 3 girls of the purplish warbler still walked over. However, they didn't get too close to Yi Xian. After all, with so many people watching, they couldn't expose themselves. The 50 or so young prodigies of the various major families who were originally following behind the 3 girls all had tears in their eyes when they saw the 3 girls of the purplish warbler. They regretted their actions. A single slip will cause everlasting regret. If they had known this would happen, they wouldn't have been so impulsive. At this point, the 200 or so young prodigies of the human camp who entered the space inside the giant star cauldron had all been captured by Yi Xian. Only a few of them had escaped. No one knew where they were now, but they wouldn't be able to cause any big waves. Seeing this scene, the surrounding void outside the space trap array was deathly silent. Including Zhang Yi, all the high-level elders of the major forces and aristocratic families had ashen faces. This time, they had really lost a lot of face. Fortunately, that little bastard in the cauldron was tactful and didn't harm their lives. As for the magic treasures that were taken away, they would have to return them in the end. Chapter 33-36. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Ji Jinghong Ransom. Everyone was stunned when they heard this. All the prisoners in the cauldron, including the 4 prodigies, were stunned at first. Then, grief and indignation appeared on their faces. That was too shameless. Hadn't all the magical equipment and training resources of the 200 people been confiscated? These were all the prodigies of the major clans and sections. Which one of them didn't have a large amount of cultivation resources in their storage Dharma treasures? Now, all of them had been taken away by Yi Xian, but he was still not satisfied. He actually wanted to ask for ransom from the clans and sects behind them. This was simply insane. Ling Huchong, aren't you afraid that you'll explode? Don't be too greedy, and don't go too far. In anger, one of the prisoners stood out and reprimanded Yi Xian. Don't forget, our Heaven Battle Emperor clan's patriarch Qingquan will be back soon. When that time comes, even your giant star cauldron won't be able to stop him. He'll definitely drag you out and completely suppress you, you coward. This prisoner was a member of the Heaven Battle Emperor clan. Although he was not a direct descendant and was only a descendant of a branch, he was a very famous prodigy of the Heaven Battle Emperor clan. This time, he was also sent into the Shenong cauldron. So you're the descendant of that old bastard. I didn't know that the little bastard of the Heaven Battle Emperor clan was here too. Yi Xian was stunned for a moment. Then, he grinned. If I had known, I wouldn't have even had the interest to take you as a prisoner. Like you Heaven Battle Emperor 8 clans, I'll explode every single one of you I see. Boom! Yi Xian roared the last 4 words. Before he finished speaking, the mecha giant suddenly rushed out. This time, he used his full strength and even activated the mini antimatter death ray cannon system of the glazed mecha. With this punch, Yi Xian's physical body's vital energy and blood merged with the energy ball of the antimatter death light cannon and smashed onto the body of the genius of the Heavenly War Empire. Following a loud explosion, his entire body exploded into a bloody mist. Not a single hair was left. Silence. Silence. A deathly silence. This time, even the purplish warbler, Duanmu Xiaocha, and Zhao Qianru were shocked. This time, when they entered the cauldron space, their original plan was to mingle with the geniuses of the various great clans and secretly help Yi Xian when he was in danger. However, when they saw how powerful Yi Xian was, they were completely at ease. But now, following the death of this descendant of the Heaven Battle Emperor clan, the hearts of the 3 girls, which had just calmed down, were once again suspended in their throats. The death of a collateral descendant of the Heaven Battle Emperor clan was not a big deal. The key was that Yi Xian's actions and words had completely pushed him to the opposite side of the Heaven Battle Empire. In fact, before he revealed his true identity, the other 2 empires in the science and technology faction, as well as the entire immortal dynasty, would not let this matter go so easily. After all, this clamor was in front of countless powerful beings in the void outside the star cauldron. It had already escalated to the level of a clan's reputation. At this moment, following the death of this descendant of the Heaven Battle Emperor clan, the 200 prisoners around Yi Xian were all silent. No one dared to provoke him again at this time. This guy was definitely a real god of death. If he did not agree with him, he would explode. He was not to be trifled with. As for outside the star cauldron, a large number of gasps could be heard. As Yi Xian spoke, he raised his hand and blasted a descendant of the Heaven Battle Emperor clan to death. This was out of everyone's expectations. The matter had reached a point of no return. The Heaven Battle Empire would definitely not let this matter go. Outside the star cauldron, the Heaven Battle Emperor clan's elder Zhang Yi roared like thunder. If not for the restriction of the star cauldron's own field rules, he would have leaped into the cauldron at this moment and entered the star cauldron space. At this moment, Yi Xian, who was in the star cauldron space, spoke again. He still pointed his middle finger at the sky, and then his voice rang out. What this young master needs are all kinds of heavenly treasures and mineral materials to concoct gene fluids of level 12 and above. The more the better. If there's too little, it won't enter this young master's eyes. You've seen what happened to that little bastard just now. Good luck. You only have 1 day. After 1 day, if there is still any family or sect that does not send the ransom money into the star cauldron, the transaction will be cancelled. This young master does not keep useless people under him. When the time comes, I will directly eliminate them. Of course, there's no need for the 8 great guardian deities and the 3 great beauties who did not make a move just now. There has to be a difference in treatment. This is their own choice, so they can't blame anyone. Whoosh. Are you the so-called human clan's heaven's pride? You've actually been completely annihilated. This really makes me speechless. Before Yi Xian could finish his words, a sound of breaking through the air rang out from afar. Following that was an extremely lazy voice that was clearly filled with ridicule and disdain. Everyone turned their heads and looked, only to see a silver arrow shooting from the direction of the sound of breaking through the air. In the blink of an eye, it had arrived in front of them. Suddenly, it stopped, and a tall figure with a pair of shining silver horns on his back appeared, floating high in the void more than 10 miles away. This figure was one of the members of the Second Universe's Heaven's Pride team that entered the space inside the cauldron last. He was the young master of the Yinji clan, Ji Jinghong. This person was slender and strong, and his face was cold and extraordinary. His whole body was shining with silver light, like a god. He was looking at this side with a faint smile from an overlooking angle. The 13-person team formed by the Heaven's Pride of the Second Universe's various clans separated after entering the space inside the cauldron. Each of them started searching in different directions. The young master of the Yinji clan, Ji Jinghong, happened to be in this direction. Coupled with his amazing speed, he was the first to encounter Yi Xian and the other human clan's masters. As soon as Ji Jinghong arrived, he offended everyone with just a few words, which made them feel extremely disgusted. Wu Chenzi, Gong Wuxin, and the other prisoners of war all glared at him. They thought that he was too arrogant. He came to the human clan's territory and deliberately provoked them. He was simply too arrogant. In fact, what they didn't know was that Ji Jinghong didn't deliberately disrespect them. He and the other 12 young masters and young clans of the Second Universe's Federation that entered the space inside the Shenong Cauldron had always been like this. Although the various clans of the Second Universe's Federation were not as strong as the human clan, they were a whole race after all. As young masters and young clans, in terms of status, even the princes of the Eternal Dynasty were inferior to them. After all, the Eternal Dynasty didn't represent the entire human clan. Chapter 33-37. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. The descendants of the divine birds. There was a reason why the young masters of the various races in the Second Universe were said to be much stronger than Wu Chenzi and Gong Wuxin, who were at the same level as the human race. Also, it was a common phenomenon that existed in the top 10 races of the Federation of the Second Universe. In the coalition army of the Second Universe that entered the internal space of the farmer god tripod, Ji Jinghong, the young master of the Yinji clan, Ritian, the young master of the Raging Bull clan, Jin Haoyan, the young master of the Golden Eagle clan, Medusa, the princess of the Colorful Python clan, and Lang Ganglai, the descendant of the Greedy Wolf clan, all belonged to the top 10 races of the Second Universe. It was safe to say that the real combat ability of the 5 of them was much stronger than that of the human race experts of the same level as Wu Chenzi and Gong Wuxin. The reason for that was their bloodline. Ever since they joined the Wan Luo Federation, the human race's technology and cultivation culture began to flourish among the various races of the Second Universe Federation. This was the law of the universe. Truly good things would never be lost. No matter where they went, they would blossom and bear fruit. But for the races of the Second Universe's Federation, the technology and cultivation culture that came from the human race and were accepted by them were not the most important part of their combat ability. The most important part of the combat ability of the races of the Second Universe's Federation was actually their own bloodline inheritance. The bloodline inheritance differed from race to race. Some were strong and some were weak. The races of the Second Universe's Federation, which ranked in the top 10, all had extraordinary bloodline inheritances, which led to the weird situation where the real combat ability of the races was much higher than their own level. For example, Ji Jinghong, the young master of the Yinji clan, Ritian, the young master of the Raging Bull clan, Jin Haoyan, the young master of the Golden Eagle clan, Medusa, the princess of the Colorful Python clan, and Lang Ganglai, the descendant of the Greedy Wolf clan, although their level was the same as Gong Wuxin's, which was the peak of the 5th level of the origin, the 9th level of the origin. But in fact, their real combat ability was comparable to that of the experts of the 10th level of the Tao Heaven Realm. They might not be able to defeat the human experts of the late stage of the Tao Heaven Realm, but they were definitely not as simple as those in the early stage of the Tao Heaven Realm. Basically, all 5 of them had the combat prowess to fight a mid-stage Grotto Heaven Realm cultivator to the death. All 5 of them were existences that were able to surmount an entire realm and compete with the experts of the human race. From a certain point of view, they could actually be considered to be existences on par with the peerless geniuses of the human race like the Devil Falls Sun and Devil Dust Maiden. The young masters of the top 10 races in the second universe were all such characters. That was why the young master of the Silver Tribe, Ji Jinghong, was so arrogant and looked down on Gong Wu Xian, Wu Chenzi, and the others. He was indeed qualified to do so. In his eyes, among the entire younger generation of the human clan, only the 2 peerless geniuses who had recently appeared and the 4 peerless geniuses, including the fallen demon sun and the demon dust woman, could enter his eyes. Yi Xian did not know about any of this, nor was he interested in knowing. Now he only knew that this guy in front of him was very annoying. More importantly, he was not from the human clan of the 3rd universe. But now, he had come to the territory of the human clan and was pretending to be a big shot. Sneering in his heart, Yi Xian glanced at Ji Jinghong and asked in a frivolous tone, "If I'm not wrong, you should be from the Silver Tribe of the 2nd universe?" Ling Huchong, watch your tone. Ji Jinghong had an extraordinary bearing. As the young master of an entire tribe, he had always been very sensitive. He said to Yi Xian with a faint smile, "I'm Ji Jinghong, the young master of the Silver Tribe. You'd better not call yourself a young master in front of me, because it's very embarrassing. Even if I don't mind, the human clan's reputation will be tarnished because of you. You will become a joke." His words were even more impolite. Many of the experts of the human clan in the void around the void trap formation looked displeased. It was quite unpleasant to hear. However, they didn't say much, because although Ji Jinghong's words were impolite, from a certain point of view, what he said was indeed the truth. Although the Silver Tribe was not as strong as the human clan, it was a complete tribe after all. Ji Jinghong, as the young master and the heir of a certain human clan family, was indeed far inferior to him in terms of official status. Of course, in the era of the universe, strength was respected. The human clan was so powerful that even if all the tribes of the 2nd universe joined forces, they could only barely match them. In fact, the human clan didn't put any of the tribes of the 2nd universe in their eyes. However, if such words were said in a hostile relationship, it would be fine, but now that everyone was a member of the Wan Luo Federation, such words really shouldn't be said in public. It would affect the internal unity of the Federation. Especially in the current situation where the internal relations of the Federation were already tense, such words were even more sensitive. It was fine if everyone was unhappy in their hearts, but they shouldn't really say it out loud. What's more, Ji Jinghong was just a young master of a certain Federation tribe in the 2nd universe. With the existence of a junior, who would have the nerve to be serious with him? Therefore, although the higher-ups of the various forces of the human clan, including Zhang Yi, were unhappy in their hearts, none of them said a word. However, just because they didn't say anything, it didn't mean that the group of human clan juniors in the space inside the cauldron would do the same. Seeing that Ji Jinghong was becoming more and more arrogant, saying that even the peerless geniuses of the human clan weren't qualified to call themselves young master in front of him, Wu Chenzi, Gong Wuxin, and the others were furious and began to scold him one after another. It wasn't that they were helping Yi Xian, but that they were all suppressed by Yi Xian. If Ji Jinghong degraded Yi Xian to be worthless, then what were they? Similarly, Yi Xian was also extremely disgusted by Ji Jinghong's words, and his anger had already surged. Raising his right hand, he signaled Gong Wuxin, Wu Chenzi, and the other prisoners of war to be quiet. He turned his head to look at Ji Jinghong in the distance and sneered, "You're just a birdman. No, you can't even be considered a birdman." At this point, Yi Xian seemed to suddenly think of something. After a slight pause, the corners of his mouth slowly curved into a rather playful and cold smile. He stared at Ji Jinghong and asked with a smile, "I heard that the original form of your Inji clan is actually a kind of Inji immortal bird, and the human form is just a manifestation. In fact, you don't have the blood of the human clan, right?" "Of course, my clan is the descendant of the ancient divine bird. How could we have the blood of the human clan?" What a joke. Ji Jinghong didn't think much of it. Seeing that Yi Xian had brought up the issue of the bloodline that he had always been proud of, he immediately raised his chin and said proudly, "The reason why my clan takes on the appearance of a human is only because we joined the Federation. After all, we have to deal with the human clan." "Are you sure you don't have the blood of the human clan? Then I'm relieved. Finally, I don't have to worry about psychological problems." Chapter 33-38. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Braised chicken wings, boom. An earth-shattering explosion sounded. The glazed mecha, which was 10 feet tall like a small mountain, swung its giant fist and collided head-on with Ji Jinghong, who had seen this coming from the void in front of it. Although this punch was powerful, Ji Jinghong wasn't hurt at all. Of course, this was because Yi Xian didn't use his full strength. At least, he didn't activate the glazed mecha's miniature antimatter death ray cannon like he did when he blasted the Heaven Battle Emperor clan prisoner into a bloody mist. After all, he was still thinking about the divine bird wings. If he really blasted them into pieces, what would he eat then? However, Wu Chenzi, Gong Wuxin, and the other prisoners didn't know this. Although they didn't have a good impression of Yi Xian and wanted nothing more than to immediately suppress him on the spot, at this moment, when Yi Xian and Ji Jinghong started fighting, all of the prisoners, including Wu Chenzi, Gong Wuxin, and the other 4 geniuses of the human race, subconsciously stood on Yi Xian's side, hoping that he could crush Ji Jinghong. Internal conflicts were human affairs, but if it involved the extraterrestrial powerhouses, they could temporarily put aside their personal grudges and think about how to suppress the extraterrestrial powerhouses first. Unfortunately, the result disappointed everyone. The scene of Yi Xian blasting the Heaven Battle Emperor clan prodigy into a bloody mist didn't appear again. There wasn't even the familiar sound of bones cracking. There was only the sound of turbulent energy whistling, and a small part of the void was affected. This punch seemed to be a tie. Young Master Ling Hu didn't suppress Ji Jinghong on the spot like before, and didn't even injure her. This result made Gong Wuxin and the others feel very disappointed and resentful. If this person could fight young Master Ling Hu to a tie, didn't that mean that if they were to fight against him, they would also be suppressed like now? When they thought of this, they felt even more indignant. Their desire for Yi Xian to suppress Yi Xian grew stronger. Some people even cheered loudly. It was impossible to tell that they were all Yi Xian's prisoners. Is this the so-called peerless genius of the human race? In my opinion, he's just a so-so. What a disappointment. Ji Jinghong's confidence was greatly boosted by the fact that he was evenly matched with Yi Xian's punch. The last bit of hesitation in his heart disappeared as he suddenly laughed loudly. This young master has yet to reveal his true form. I'm afraid you won't be able to withstand it if I use the power of my bloodline. Alas, the world is indeed like this. Some things are exaggerated. You're not as good as your reputation. You want to hear the truth? Yi Xian sneered, I'm just worried. If I use too much force, you'll be killed before you can manifest your animal form. When that happens, I won't be able to see your true form, and I won't be able to confirm whether you have human blood in you. When that happens, even if the chicken wings are cooked, I won't dare to eat them. It'll be a psychological barrier. Braised chicken wings? Damn you, Ling Huchong. He must be suppressed. Ji Jinghong was furious. He roared like thunder as he activated his bloodline and revealed his true form. This young master is a descendant of an ancient divine bird. How dare you speak of braised chicken? This is intolerable. On the ground below, Gong Wu Xian, Wu Chenzi, and the other prisoners were also stunned. This was the second time Yi Xian had mentioned the idea of roasting wings. When he first mentioned it, almost no one took it seriously. After all, it was too strange. How thick of a mind would one have to be to think of roasting and eating his opponent while fighting? How terrifying would one's imagination be to do such a thing? But at this moment, when Yi Xian mentioned it again, they couldn't help but feel a little suspicious. Even the three girls, Purplish Warbler, Duanmu Xiaocha, and Zhao Qianru, were greatly surprised and began to mutter to themselves. Heavens, this guy can't really be thinking of roasting his opponent and eating him, right? He really is a big bastard, but I like it. That's right, elder sister Ziying. Little Cha also thinks so. If that guy really is a descendant of a divine bird, his wings will definitely be very delicious. After all, he's not a human, so there's no psychological barrier to eating them. Yes, yes, yes. Then it's settled. When this big bird is killed, we'll cook it together. At that time, we'll share a chicken wing. Otherwise, that guy will say we're freeloaders. Gong Wuxin, Wu Chenzi, and the rest of the prisoners were completely dumbfounded when they heard the conversation between the three girls. In the end, they all shuddered and retreated together, putting some distance between them and Xianyuan Ziying and the other two girls. They suddenly felt that these three girls weren't as innocent and harmless as they looked on the surface. They were just as ferocious as they were. Screech! A high-pitched bird cry rang out. The sky that was originally filled with endless nine-colored brilliance was instantly filled with silver light. The young master of the Yingji clan, Ji Jinghong, had manifested his true form as a Yingji bird. Ji Jinghong was actually 10,000 meters long, covering a small part of the sky. It was so huge that it was shocking. Although this clan had the true form of a Yingji bird, the size of their true form was different due to the density of their bloodline. Ji Jinghong was only at the 9th Great Realm, the Origin Realm, but his true form was 10,000 meters long. Even some of the clan's experts at the 13th Great Realm, the Genesis Realm, couldn't compare. From this, one could see how high the density of his bloodline was. As expected of the young master of the Yingji clan, he was worthy of being called the #1 prodigy of the younger generation. At this moment, Ji Jinghong was incomparably arrogant after revealing his true form, the silver Ji Great Bird. He flapped his pair of silver wings that spanned over 10,000 meters and soared proudly in the sky. The boundless silver light that poured out from his feathers was dazzling. Even Gong Wuxin, Wu Chenzi, and the others on the ground couldn't help but be stunned. A hint of unwillingness flashed across their faces, but they had to admit that Ji Jinghong's true form was indeed stunning enough. Unfortunately, before he could proudly circle in the sky, Yi Xian had already soared into the sky. The words that came out of his mouth were stupefying, and almost caused Ji Jinghong to fall from the sky in anger. Wow, what a big pair of chicken wings. What should we do? We can't finish it in one meal. Previous chapter. Next chapter, boom. Following these words that caused people to go berserk, the 30-meter-tall glazed mecha giant suddenly punched out and shouted, "Glazed fist, heavenly lightning strike." Crack. Kacha. As soon as Yi Xian finished his words, the sound of crackling lightning came from the sky in response. The so-called glazed fist didn't exist. Even if it did, Yi Xian wouldn't give it a name like heavenly lightning strike. That would be too old-fashioned. The reason he shouted like that was to hide the fact that he was using the spiritual lightning technique. As the spiritual source core in his brain transformed and evolved once again, Yi Xian, who possessed level 7 spiritual power, the spiritual lightning technique was originally at the intermediate level. Now that it had advanced to the advanced level, its power had greatly increased. This was a good opportunity. A big bird flying randomly in the sky deserved to be struck by lightning. Chapter 33-39. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. I'll eat you if you don't eat it. Ever since Ji Jinghong revealed his true form, Yi Xian no longer treated him as a human. This was not an insult, but a fact. This fellow was indeed a large bird with an extraordinarily dense bloodline. Yi Xian was delighted to see it. This large bird was suspected to have the bloodline of an ancient divine bird. If it was in existence with a thin bloodline, it would not be of much use. However, if the bloodline was thick enough, to Yi Xian, it would be no different from a type of flesh medicine that could be of great use in the future. He planned to keep this fellow in the Shinnon cauldron. In the future, when he needed the bird's blood to refine medicine, he could use it at any time. In this cauldron, apart from the central district volcano that occupied half of the space, there were many different types of spirit herbs and spirit beasts in the surrounding mountains that occupied the rest of the space. They were all meant to be used in medicine in the future. Having an additional Inji bird was not a problem at all. However, this matter could not be known to the Inji clan. Otherwise, even if Yi Xian safely escaped this time, they would definitely not let this matter rest. They would definitely have a way to track down Yi Xian's whereabouts. This feeling of being remembered by a thief was not a good feeling. Yi Xian did not want to try it. Therefore, Ji Jinghong had to die. At least, on the surface, it had to be so. Although the Inji clan would not let this matter rest after killing the young clan leader, revenge and saving a life were two different things. The intensity would definitely not be the same. This was something that Yi Xian was clear about. At this moment, as the invisible spiritual energy struck a hole in Ji Jinghong's bird head, it let out a mournful cry and directly fainted, falling from the sky. What made Yi Xian pleasantly surprised was that because this fellow was flying in the sky previously, it was a certain distance away from its original location. At this moment, it was not far from the central cauldron volcano. It was clearly at the edge of the volcano's crater. Big Chicky, you're too bad. No wonder you were struck by lightning. Seeing that you're about to die, you actually deliberately ran into the crater of the volcano. Are you trying to waste this young master's top-grade ingredients? Seeing that Ji Jinghong had fainted and was falling toward the crater of the volcano, Yi Xian deliberately shouted, "Big Chicky, stop. Give this young master's chicken wing, chop." After shouting the last word, Yi Xian raised his hand. Art translation. The withered demon blood blade instantly rushed out of the glazed mech and expanded with the wind. In the blink of an eye, it had turned into a 100-meter-long heavenly blade, slashing toward the silver G big bird that was falling toward the furnace volcano in the central region. Yi Xian Yu translation was Ji Jinghong translation, calm, Yu translation Yu, S translation U translation. Translation pop. The TTS rees, S as it. Blood, S bloods. SSSS, S, and the YT. Yi. Screech. Ji Jinghong, who had a small part of her right leg chopped off and fainted from the mental power thunderbolts earlier, woke up from the pain. She let out a wail and fell toward the furnace volcano below. Frightened, she fainted again and disappeared. However, the withered demon blood blades suddenly circled around and stabbed into the small section of the silver wing that had been cut off, bringing it back to Yi Xian. During this process, Yi Xian secretly activated the Shinnon cauldron, causing the central region furnace volcano to erupt into a giant orange flame that covered the sky and covered the entire volcano. Anyone who saw this would know that the silver G bird that had just fallen into the depths of the volcano must have been burned to ashes. Of course, this was not the case. Yi Xian had already refined the Shinnon cauldron and ignited the central region furnace volcano's orange-red flames with his heart fire. Under his mental control, the depths of the central region furnace volcano's monstrous flames were basically a caged area. There were no flames at all, including the already refined undying and imperishable bead. It was sealed in a corner of the volcano's bottom. Now, Yi Xian had also directly trapped Ji Jinghong there. No sound or aura could be transmitted. At this point, Yi Xian had finally succeeded in capturing a live one. He had done it in such a secretive manner that it seemed as if Ji Jinghong herself, who had fallen into the depths of the volcano, had ignited the monstrous orange-red flames that rose into the sky from within the volcano. Yi Xian was not going to let this go. He immediately raised his head to look at the silver canopy that Gong Wuxin had been maintaining all this time. He stomped his feet and roared thunderously, "Silver Ji clan, listen up. This young master knows that you must have other old birds watching from the outside. This little chick Ji Jinghong has tormented this young master's cauldron space to this extent, even causing the volcano to erupt. How many flowers and plants will be burned to death? This matter is not over yet. You must compensate, or this young master will not let this matter rest. As soon as he finished speaking, the withered demon blood blade that was stuck in the small section of Ji Jinghong's silver wing had already returned to Yi Xian with a wave of his hand. He then extended his mecha's giant arm and dragged Ji Jinghong's wing to the ground. He waved at the purplish warbler, Duanmu Xiaocha, and Zhao Qianru and said, "Three great beauties, this is a top-grade ingredient. Of course, it's only right for beauties to accompany me to enjoy it. Come over here and eat with this young master. If anyone dares to refuse, this young master will kill them." Of course, he said this on purpose. This kind of good food was a great supplement to one's blood and qi. With the purplish warbler and the others here, if he did not take the initiative, he would definitely be punished again. Therefore, Yi Xian could only do this. He had to bear the brunt of his bad reputation and let the three witches enjoy the fruits of their labor. The three girls were quite satisfied with Yi Xian's consideration. They looked at Yi Xian with eyes that said, "At least you're sensible." However, their faces were full of struggle and anger. They even raised their hands to criticize him, saying that although the Silver Ji clan was not part of the human race, they were still friends of the Wan Luo Federation. They would rather die than eat the flesh of their people. When Yi Xian heard this, he almost fainted. Even Wu Chenzi, Gong Wuxin, and the other prisoners of war had strange expressions. In their opinion, since they were being coerced, it would be a waste if they did not eat it. It was obvious that this thing was very nutritious. Although Yi Xian was speechless, in order to avoid being punished by the three girls in the future, he could only force a smile and threaten them again. In the end, his expression turned ferocious, like a great demon, saying, "If you don't eat it, I'll eat you." In the end, the three purplish warbler girls finally obeyed him with tears in their eyes. Under Yi Xian's coercion, they went to a small stream and washed the several-meter-long silver wing clean. After doing all this, Yi Xian once again summoned his withered demon blood blade and pierced through the chicken wing that had been washed and peeled. He flew across the sky and directly arrived at the mouth of the volcano. Then, he roasted it in an orange flame that rushed into the sky. Soon, it was golden yellow and the oil was everywhere. The aroma spread throughout the mountains. There was a reason why he used the orange flame to roast it. This was the Shenong cauldron's one-colored flame. When roasted, it could preserve the essence of the meat and prevent it from losing energy. Chapter 3340. Translator, Exodus Tales Editor, Exodus Tales. What a huge piece of steak. Compared to Ji Jinghong's silver Ji wing, which was over 10,000 meters long, it could only be considered a tiny bit. It was not even the tip of the wing, but it was still 7 to 8 meters long and over 2 meters thick. After being roasted, the impurities were removed by the orange flame, leaving behind only the essence, the meat and the bones. However, the wing was still over 2 feet thick and over 3 meters long. It seemed impossible for the three of them to finish it. But in reality, that was not the case at all. After being roasted by the orange flame, the silver Ji wing melted in the mouth. Yi Xian, the purplish warbler, Duanmu Xiaocha, and Zhao Qianru, the four of them, finished half of the golden wing in less than a few minutes. However, their stomachs did not feel full at all. From the looks of it, it was not a problem for the four of them to share the golden wing that was even bigger than them. At this moment, as half of the golden wing entered their stomachs, the hundreds of millions of pores on the four of them opened up. It was as if endless rays of auspicious light were gushing out from their pores, gathering into a dense mist above their heads. It was a sight to behold. Of course, the silver Ji wing alone did not have this kind of effect. Otherwise, this tribe would have been hunted down and eaten up long ago. The key was still the effect of the Shenong cauldron's orange flame. Although it was only a simple roasting and not a formal boiling of the great medicine of heaven and earth, it was still no small matter. Even if an ordinary alchemist used the best cauldron to refine it, they would not be able to achieve this level of effect. I'm about to break through. That goddamn bastard, he actually forced this young miss to eat the flesh of an ally. He actually made it so that I'm about to break through because of this. How am I going to face people in the future? Wu, when she had eaten 2/3 of the wing, the purplish warbler suddenly screamed. Her cultivation was originally at the origin 7th rank. She did not expect that after sharing 2/3 of the silver-winged bird with Yi Xian and the others, she would actually break through. At this moment, the girl's face was full of pain. She was almost crying as she complained about Yi Xian's crimes. However, her heart was blooming with joy. The reason why she was in pain was because her entire body was about to explode. The degree of energy that shocked her. She cursed in her heart. Why did it have to be earlier or later? Now, there was no way she could continue eating. As the purplish warbler Yu Xiaocha, Wu Chenzi, Gong Wuxin, and the other prisoners of war were so envious that their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. As expected of Big Chicky, who possesses the bloodline of the ancient divine bird. The energy contained within this meat is simply too shocking. There is no need to complain about the taste as well. Compared to this, all those red braised dragon liver and whatnot are nothing. At this point, Yi Xian seemed to have thought of something. At this moment, he waved his hand and roared at the 8 great guardian warriors. What are the 8 of you still waiting for? This daddy does not raise disloyal people. If you don't dare to eat this wing, then you're not my people. Do you believe me when I say that I'll kill you right now? After all, the 8 great guardian warriors were the leaders of the prisoners of war under his command. He had to give them some benefits. If he wanted them to run without feeding them grass, that would not work. The 8 great guardian warriors felt as if they had been pardoned. As soon as they heard Yi Xian's words, they had already praised him to the heavens. They had been waiting impatiently for this moment. However, the 8 of them were not fools. They knew that they could not show this. Their faces all showed signs of struggle. In the end, they seemed to have made up their minds. They gritted their teeth and took a large piece of wing from Yi Xian. In the end, one of them might have been greedy for too long. He opened his mouth and swallowed the whole thing with a gulp. He didn't even taste it. Looking at the 7 people around him who were all eating with a painful expression, he raised his hand and gave himself 2 big slaps. He originally wanted to say that he was greedy, but when the words came out of his mouth, they became, sinful, sinful. On the side, Gong Wuxin, Wu Chenzi, and the others rolled their eyes and looked at him with disdain. Outside the Shinong cauldron, in the void around the great space trap formation. In the space inside the cauldron, Yi Xian, the purplish warbler, and the 8 great guardian warriors were eating heartily. However, outside the cauldron, there was a complete uproar. Everything that happened inside was seen clearly by everyone in the outside world through the silver light screen. The Inji clan was one of the top 10 clans in the Federation of the Second Universe. But now, their young clan leader was cut down from the void, and even a piece of wing was roasted and eaten. This was too shocking. Similar things had never happened before, and it shocked everyone. When Tuoba Xiong, Gong Yang Buhui, Chan Yu Jing Tian, and the others heard Yi Xian compare the roasted wing with the braised dragon liver, they subconsciously turned their heads and exchanged a look. Then, they glanced in the direction of the void occupied by the Second Universe's coalition army with a very sympathetic look. In their eyes, young Master Linghu was a complete foodie. What he said just now was clearly the rhythm of the Inji clan. Ah, Linghu Chong, if I don't kill you, I am not a man. On the side of the Second Universe's coalition army, an elder of the Inji clan roared like thunder. His roar shook the void. This time, their clan had lost a lot of face. They had tried to steal a chicken but ended up losing a handful of rice. Oh, it's a sin, a sin. When the elder of the Inji clan was almost done roaring, the old man of the purplish warbler quickly took over the topic. He shook his head and said, "This Linghu Chong is too hateful. My Ziying has never been willing to step on an ant since she was young, and she has never eaten meat. This time, she is really in big trouble. She was forced to eat the flesh of an ally. For that little girl, this is worse than death." On the side, the old master of the Duanmu family also took over the topic and quickly exonerated Duanmu Xiaocha. Yes, 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 my Xiaocha is the same. Sigh, that child has never eaten roasted greasy things. This time, she is really in big trouble. The person in charge of Bodhi technology originally wanted to say something, but he subconsciously glanced in the direction of the Second Universe's coalition army. After meeting the murderous gaze of the elder of the Inji clan, he finally stretched his neck and swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. After all, anyone could see that the purplish warbler, Duanmu Xiaocha, and Zhao Qianru had benefited greatly this time. The former was even about to break through on the spot. Although it was very likely that she was forced, the fact that she had benefited could not be denied. At this moment, the elders of the Inji clan were in a fit of anger. There was nothing wrong with them wanting to excuse the younger generation, but saying that they couldn't even bear to step on an ant since they were young and didn't even eat meat was a bit exaggerated. It was clearly adding fuel to the fire. If they did not eat meat, they might as well be nuns. Which Starry Sky Master did not have blood on their hands? They could not even bear to step on an ant, so they were probably blushing when they said this. Yi Xian and the others were completely unaware of everything that happened in the outside world, but they could guess that something must have happened. Chapter 33:41. Is wolf meat delicious? Moo. This old man is going to kill him. Ah, this is too much. This is too much. Is this kid a foodie? He just finished eating a piece of the Inji clan's chicken wing, and now he's eyeing our barbarian bull clan's young master? He even said something about a big steak. Could it be that in his eyes, the young master of my barbarian bull clan is a flying steak? If that's the case, wouldn't this old man be an even bigger piece of old steak? There's no King justice here. Moo. As Yi Xian's words sounded out, an angry moo suddenly came from the direction of the Second Universe's alliance army in the surrounding space. Immediately after, the thunderous roar of one of the elders from the barbarian bull clan resounded through the air, causing everyone in the surroundings to be charred on the outside and tender on the inside. When they looked at the silver light curtain in the space trap array again, everyone's expression changed. They didn't know what to say about Yi Xian in their hearts. This guy was too monstrous. He had just eaten the Inji clan's young master, and now he wanted to eat the barbarian bull clan's young master. This was clearly the rhythm of offending all the clans in the Second Universe's federation. This kind of godly person, from ancient times to the present, no one dared to think about it before. Shinong Cauldron, inside the cauldron space. After Yi Xian's words sounded, everyone subconsciously turned their heads to look in the southwest direction. Then, everyone, including Duanmu Xiaocha and Zhao Qianru, opened their mouths wide and had a sluggish expression on their faces. Because in the direction of their line of sight, there was a huge blood-colored bull roaring. This was clearly a powerhouse from the Second Universe's barbarian bull clan. He also didn't have a human bloodline, but like the Inji clan's young master Ji Jinghong, he had the blood of the ancient barbarian bull clan flowing in his body. In front of them, the barbarian bull clan powerhouse who was roaring in the air must have seen what happened here from a distance. In anger, he immediately revealed his true body and rushed over at an extremely fast speed. From the aura emitted from his body, he was only at the 9th stage of the origin, but his true body was 1,000 meters in size. Obviously, the bloodline density of this barbarian bull clan powerhouse was extremely strong. Most likely, like Ji Jinghong, he was a direct descendant of the barbarian bull clan and had a very high status. In Yi Xian's eyes, such an important descendant of the barbarian bull clan was viewed as a giant steak that could fly. From his tone, it was obvious that he planned to have a roasted steak after eating the chicken wings. This was too shocking. Even Wu Chunzi, Gong Wuxin, Chou Doufu, and Yu Xianlong, the 4 prodigies of the human race couldn't bear it. They felt like they were about to be struck by lightning. At this time, Yi Xian sighed, because he knew that he couldn't eat the steak this time. If he wanted to eat the steak, this barbarian bull with a strong bloodline couldn't live, but Yi Xian now took a fancy to the rich barbarian bull clan bloodline in his body. He planned to raise it in the internal space of the Shinong Cauldron just like Ji Jinghong. In the future, when he needed the blood of the barbarian bull clan to be used to brew the great medicine of heaven and earth, he could use it at any time. However, although he couldn't eat the steak, he could still roast a bit of beef leg. Moreover, he had to do this, otherwise, the barbarian bull clan wouldn't be able to confirm that this barbarian bull with a pure bloodline had fallen, and he was afraid that in the future, they would always be chasing after him. Big Steak, tell me your name, this young master doesn't eat nameless people. After making up his mind, Yi Xian flew into the air. The huge arm of the glazed mecha pointed at the huge barbarian bull that was galloping over and roared without any trace of politeness. The key is to tell me whether you have the bloodline of the human clan or not. If you do, this young master can only kill you on the spot. You won't be able to beg me to eat you. Moo. The 1,000-meter-long barbarian bull was so angry that flames were spurting out of his nostrils. The reason he roared and even directly transformed into his true form and rushed over at such a fast speed was because he saw the chicken wing that Yi Xian had roasted before. First of all, he had a good relationship with Ji Jinghong. Second of all, even if they didn't talk about personal relationships, they were all young masters of the top 10 clans in the second universe. If Ji Jinghong was eaten by the human clan, and this person was still alive, it would be a great humiliation to the young masters of the other 9 clans. Therefore, Jiao Ri Tian rushed over at the first moment. His purpose was to kill Yi Xian. He was already so angry that he didn't even care about the words of the elders in his clan to try to win him over as much as possible. Ling Huchong, you dare to treat the young masters of the various clans in the second universe as a delicacy? This time, even if the heavens came, they wouldn't be able to save you. Moo. When Jiao Ri Tian heard that Yi Xian still wanted to eat him, he flew into a rage and roared, this young master is the young master of the barbarian bull clan. Jiao Ri Tian is also the young master of the barbarian bull clan. To be able to die under this young master's pair of horns, you won't feel wronged. Moo. After introducing himself, Jiao Ri Tian roared again. His pair of huge horns suddenly increased in size by half. They were almost as long as half of his body. They emitted an inexplicably sharp aura. Coupled with the extreme speed of his hooves, he actually tore 2 cracks in the void along the way. It was a ghastly sight. Jiao Ri Tian. Fuck, after all this time, it's another one who got struck by lightning. Yi Xian cried out in alarm and rolled his eyes on the spot. The one with the wings was too pretentious. Even the heavens couldn't stand it and struck him with a few invisible lightning bolts. You are even more hateful. But it's not your fault. You can only blame that old stupid bull of yours. Of all the names he could have given you, he just had to give you such a rebellious name. If the heavens didn't strike you, it would be unreasonable. After saying that, Yi Xian immediately activated the spiritual thunder and lightning technique. The skies seemed to be responding to him. Immediately, the same crackling sound of thunder resounded. It was frightening to hear, but they couldn't see the location of the lightning. The spiritual thunder and lightning technique was originally invisible and impossible to guard against. The result of this battle was not suspenseful. Once the spiritual thunder and lightning technique was used, no matter how strong Jiao Ri Tian was, it was useless. Several powerful spiritual thunder and lightning technique directly struck its head, instantly disintegrating its battle strength. It didn't even have the chance to use it before it followed in Ji Jinghong's footsteps and fainted. After that, Yi Xian did the same thing. He took out the withered demon blood blade and cut off a large piece of tendon from Jiao Ri Tian's thigh. At the same time, he skillfully threw Jiao Ri Tian's entire body into the furnace volcano in the central territory of the furnace volcano, where it was imprisoned separately from Ji Jinghong. All of this happened too fast. When Wu Chunzi, Gong Wuxin, and the other prisoners of war reacted, Jiao Ri Tian, who was roaring like thunder, had already disappeared. What was left was a large piece of tendon on its thigh that was pierced through by the withered demon blood blade. It was being roasted in the orange flame of the central territory of the furnace volcano. Chapter 3342. Greedy Wolf Young Master Lang Ganglia Wolf Meat? Wu Chunzi and the others looked at each other. They couldn't keep up with Yi Xian's pace and were dumbfounded. Didn't they just kill a barbarian bull? Moreover, it was the young master of the barbarian bull clan, Ritian. Why was he asking about wolves? A woo! Before they could recover from their shock, a long and angry wolf howl came from the northwest direction in the distance. Everyone was stunned for a moment before they came to a realization. It turned out that a wolf was coming. It was probably because the giant star cauldron had been refined by young Master Linghu, so even if it was far away, and everyone's cultivation was stronger than him, they couldn't sense it with their divine sense, but he knew in advance. But that wasn't the key point. The key point was the question he suddenly asked just now. Listening to his words, it was obvious that he was going to roast the wolf that was coming. He was addicted to eating. As long as it was a non-human, he would want to taste anything. Thinking like this, Wu Chenzi, Gong Wuxin, and the others sighed. They were completely convinced this time. Although the wolf hadn't arrived yet, the two that had appeared before were either the young masters of the Inji clan or the Barbarian Bull clan. These two clans were both ranked in the top 10 among the clans of the Second Universe Federation. If there was no accident, the wolf that was coming was most likely from the Greedy Wolf clan of the Second Universe, which was also one of the top 10 clans. And judging from the identities of Ji Jinghong and Jiao Ritian, the wolf that was coming was most likely the young master of the Greedy Wolf clan, Lang Ganglai. Including him, there were 3 young masters of the clans of the Second Universe Federation present, and all of them were in the top 10. This was really poking the sky. In the top 10 clans of the Second Universe Federation, the young masters of 3 clans were eaten by the same human powerhouse. If this news was spread to the Second Universe, it would cause a huge earthquake. This was really a big deal. The Federation was unstable, and it was about to break up. All of this was thanks to the stomach of this glutton before them. He'd actually eaten the entire Myriad Federation to the point of falling apart. Even though they'd witnessed this with their own eyes, they still couldn't accept and believe it. At the very least, they were absolutely unable to do such a domineering thing. However, this person in front of them was so relaxed as if he didn't care about the identities and backgrounds of these 3 people at all. He was so awesome that even if he didn't want to admit defeat, he had no choice. Before Lang Ganglai, the young master of the Greedy Wolf clan, arrived, the beef tendon cut off from Jiao Ritian's hind leg had been roasted. After all, it was the fire from the furnace volcano in the central region, the Shinong Cauldron. Even if it was only an orange flame, it was still extremely powerful. Under the roasting of the orange flame, the huge beef tendon had shrunk by half. Right now, it was only about 2 meters long and less than a meter in diameter, but it was golden and shiny. It was still dripping with oil. The withered demon blood blade whistled through the air and brought it back to the ground. Yi Xian had already set up a bluestone table with a wave of his hand. Everyone, let's eat together. This time, it's all tendon meat. There are no bones, and the beef is chewy. I don't think it will melt in your mouth like the chicken wings from before. It's such a big piece, we can't eat it all. This time, Yi Xian even invited Wu Chenzi, Gong Wuxin, and the others. These people had already stretched out their necks when the fragrant beef tendon fell from the sky. Now that they heard Yi Xian's words, they were all overjoyed. Even Wu Chenzi from the mysterious Buddhist sect subconsciously licked his lips. At this time, a voice suddenly came from the forest not far away. Xiaocha, don't remind that big bastard that I'm still in seclusion to break through. Don't leave a piece for me either. This lady will never eat the meat of a fellow Federation member again. I won't eat it even if you beat me to death. It was clearly the voice of the purplish warbler. Moreover, it was clearly a sarcastic remark. It was clearly reminding Duanmu Xiaocha to leave a piece for her. She could eat it after breaking through. At least, she should taste it. The moment the purplish warbler said this, in the void outside the great space trap formation, the elder of the Barbarian Bull clan suddenly looked up at the sky and angrily moaned. A pair of bloodshot eyes fiercely glared at old man Shenyuan. Even the elder of the Inji clan did the same. He finally realized that the 3 girls, including the 8 great Vajras, were all acting. Now, they were all exposed. The surroundings were incomparably silent. All the powerhouses of the human clan were embarrassed. Some of them even subconsciously shrank their necks and blushed. After all, they were allies of the same federation. But now, the young master of the Barbarian Bull clan was being eaten by a group of young geniuses of the human clan. They were too ashamed to go out. In the space inside the cauldron. After being threatened by Yi Xian again, Gong Wuxin and the other prisoners of war finally gathered together as if relieved of a heavy burden. The 8 great Vajras were in charge of dividing the meat. Each of them cut a large piece, and even Wu Chunzi of the Buddhist sect was no exception. They all held the meat and ate it. Their mouths were full of oil, and their eyes were green with envy. Of course, Duanmu Xiaocha also secretly hid the purplish warbler's portion. She didn't dare to let the silver light curtain in the sky see it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be easy for her to refuse to admit it. Yi Xian naturally had his reasons for doing this. He originally thought that he was only eating the young master of the Yingji clan, but he didn't expect that after wiping his mouth, another barbarian bull would come. Before the barbarian bull was finished roasting, a hungry wolf in the distance was about to arrive. Maybe there would be more to come. At this rate, the top 10 races of the second universe would all be eaten by him. If that happened, the nature of the matter would be different. He might not be able to handle it alone. At this moment, he was dragging this group of people into the water to eat together with him in order to tie the entire human race to his side. Anyway, among the 200 people, the top forces and powerful families in the technology and cultivation camps were included. It could be said that the forces and background behind them were basically equivalent to the entire human race. With these guys tied to him, not to mention the young master of the top 10 clans in the second universe, even if the young master of the federation of the entire second universe was here, Yi Xian would dare to stew him in a pot. Soon, when this large piece of barbarian bull meat was finally eaten by everyone, and when they were almost done eating, the young master of the greedy wolf clan, Lang Ganglai, who was roaring and rushing over from the northwest, finally arrived. Although Lang Ganglia's cultivation realm was the same as Ji Jinghong and Jiao Ri Tian, which was the peak of the 9th level of the origin, after he revealed his greedy wolf form, his body was only about 100 meters long. This didn't mean that the greedy wolf bloodline in his body wasn't as strong as the other two. In fact, it was the opposite. The young master of the greedy wolf clan, Lang Ganglai, was the most powerful existence among the 13 geniuses of the second universe who entered the inner space of the Shenong Cauldron this time. Chapter 33-43. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations Greedy wolf howls at the moon. It could be said that with Lang Ganglia's monstrous level, he would definitely become a giant in the Federation of the second universe after he grew up. However, when he came to the third universe of the human race this time, he met young Master Linghu, who was recognized as a peerless genius of the human race in every aspect. Before this, no matter who it was, no one would have thought that the group of young clan leaders from the second universe would end up like this. But now, the facts were in front of them. 2 young clan leaders from the top 10 races had already ended up like this. This made people worry and think about it more than they should. Although Ji Jinghong and Jiao Ri Tian's comprehensive combat strength was not as good as Lang Ganglia's, the difference was not much. After all, they were both young masters of the top 10 clans of the second universe. The difference in strength between them was so great that it was impossible for them to be like Tian Yuan. If that was the case, Lang Ganglai would not be ranked in the same circle as them. Therefore, when Lang Ganglai appeared in the huge silver light curtain above the Shenong giant cauldron, all the powerhouses outside the space trap array were nervous at first. Needless to say, Lang Ganglai was the most powerful existence among the 13 young prodigies of the second universe who had entered the cauldron's inner space. He was also the third to encounter Linghu young master. Therefore, the outcome of this battle was extremely crucial. It was said that things should not be done more than 3 times. Once more than 3 times, the bottom line in one's heart would collapse. What's more, Lang Ganglia's position was the highest among the 13 people. If even he could not escape the tragic end of being eaten by young Master Linghu, then how could the remaining 10 people be lucky? It meant that the 13 young masters of the 2 Universe Federation who entered the space inside the cauldron would be eaten by others, and all of them would be annihilated. This kind of tragic result was definitely unprecedented in the history of the Second Universe Federation. The intensity of the chain reaction was simply unimaginable. Because of this, when Lang Ganglia's figure appeared in the silver light screen, the vast space outside the space trapping formation instantly fell silent. Even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Even the two elders of the Inji clan and the barbarian Bull clan no longer clamored. They were also nervously watching the silver light curtain in the space trap array. At the same time, in the space inside the Shinnon cauldron, Yi Xian and Lang Ganglai, who had just arrived, exchanged a few words before they started fighting. According to Yi Xian's original intention, he had originally planned to ridicule them a little more. Since he had nothing to do, he was not in a hurry. It was rare to come across such a good opportunity to anger those old fogies outside, but they could not do anything to him. Yi Xian did not want to let go of this opportunity to solidify his bad reputation. Only by making people completely afraid of him, with his identity as young Master Ling Hu and his current situation of being the enemy of the entire world, would he be able to minimize the troubles in the future. At the very least, there would not be too many annoying flies coming to bother them. Even though they would be in big trouble the moment they arrived, Yi Xian had the ability to warp through space, so he was not afraid at all. His only wish was that there would be fewer Tom, Dick, and Harry bothering him. Those Tom, Dick, and Harry would delay his proper business of collecting all kinds of heaven and earth treasures and rare minerals to concoct Geno potions, as well as preparing to use the Shinnon cauldron to brew great medicines in the future. However, that was not the case for Lang Ganglai. He was so angry that he could not wait to kill Yi Xian immediately. Moreover, he seemed to have realized that he was not a match for young Master Ling Hu at all. Therefore, as soon as he arrived, he did not say anything and directly started fighting. Yi Xian still fought alone, including the purplish warbler, Gong Wuxin, and the other prisoners of war who had successfully broken through to the 9th Great Realm, Origin Stage 9. He did not order them around and let them fight on the ground as he soared into the sky. Awoo! In the void, a giant wolf with a body of 100 meters tall and completely silver fur suddenly raised its head and howled toward the sky. Although this wasn't the first time Yi Xian had heard the howl coming from Lang Gonglia's mouth, he'd already howled many times before this fellow arrived. But this time, the howl was clearly different. It was not angry, nor did it carry the slightest emotion. Instead, it seemed to be longer, and there was a strange rhythm to it. Yi Xian was shocked, but he could not describe what kind of feeling it was. In the next moment, a strange scene appeared. As Lang Gonglia's howl continued to resound in the sky, a silver moon slowly appeared in the sky of the cauldron under the huge silver light screen formed by Gong Wuxin's crystal ball reflection technique. When this scene appeared, Gong Wuxin and the others on the ground opened their mouths wide. Even Yi Xian was momentarily stunned. This was clearly the interior of the Shinnon cauldron, so how could a moon appear? Without a doubt, this strange moon had something to do with Lang Ganglai. It was as if it was summoned by this long wolf howl, or rather, it was condensed by this long wolf howl. Just as Yi Xian was puzzled and was about to ask the devouring system for guidance, Gong Wuxin's expression changed drastically. He cried out involuntarily, "The greedy wolf howls at the moon." This is the legendary greedy wolf howls at the moon. This is an ancient divine ability passed down in the bloodline of the Greedy Wolf clan. Not every member of the Greedy Wolf clan can awaken it. Sometimes, it is normal that no one in the clan can awaken it. The bright moon in the sky is not a real thing, but a projection of the divine ability. It has a mysterious power. It is said that wherever the light of this bright moon shines, all the energy will be taken by the user of this divine ability, devoured and controlled at will. In this way, the members of the Greedy Wolf clan who possess this bloodline divine ability are in an invincible position. They are like a real greedy heavenly wolf, who can endlessly replenish their energy in battle and greedily plunder all the energy that the bright moon shines on, including their opponents. These words caused a wave of exclamations among the captives on the ground. Even Yi Xian couldn't help but be moved when he heard these words. To be able to continuously devour energy in a large area for its own use in battle was truly heaven-defying. However, he was merely moved. He definitely wasn't envious at all. Compared to his devouring doppelganger, this divine ability was still a little lacking. The energy that the devouring doppelganger devoured could be turned into his own cultivation and strength, which could be achieved after refining. However, judging from the fact that the illusory moon in the sky was a divine ability projection, the energy that it absorbed was most likely a one-time consumption attribute. Although it was not bad, it was not perfect. It didn't solve the fundamental problem. Moreover, whether the power of this bright moon was as powerful as Gong Wuxin said it was still unknown. As for how powerful it was, he would know after testing it. Chapter 33-44. Breakthrough in Battle, Kacha. Kacha, with a thought from Yi Xian, the crackling sound of lightning could be heard from the sky. Everything was exactly the same as before. Both Ji Jinghong and Zhao Ri Tian had fallen because of this strange invisible lightning. It was simply too difficult to defend against. Lightning was fast and powerful to begin with, but it was also invisible. Who could defend against it? Following the sound of these lightning bolts, Wu Chenzi, Gong Wuxin, and the others on the ground immediately showed a look of relief. They had basically gotten used to it. It was a conditioned reflex that once the sound of lightning came, someone would immediately fall. When Yi Xian first shouted at Ji Jinghong, Gong Wuxin and the others didn't think much of it and just thought it was a coincidence. However, when Yi Xian used this move to kill Zhao Ri Tian for the second time, even a fool would understand what was going on. Before this, Yi Xian had never used the spiritual lightning technique in the third universe of the human race. Therefore, even if he used it now, it wouldn't be like when he used the fallen sky bow, which immediately made people think about his true identity. Although this spiritual lightning technique was indeed strange and extraordinary, this was after all the space inside the giant star cauldron. This giant cauldron had been refined and collected by Yi Xian, so it was naturally under his control. In the eyes of Gong Wuxin and the others, it really wasn't a big deal for Yi Xian to create lightning bolts with a thought. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that in this space inside the cauldron, he was actually the master. Previously, Gong Wuxin and the others didn't realize this point, but later they understood. Then, they recalled that Yi Xian had previously said that the space inside the cauldron had been adjusted by him, so that one could only enter but not leave. This made them regret their actions even more. In this place, Yi Xian was clearly a godlike existence, yet they didn't know what was good for them. They eagerly rushed over to their deaths and ended up in this state. In fact, they deserved it. They had guessed correctly. Yi Xian didn't want to expose the fact that he could control the central region furnace volcano inside the cauldron. Otherwise, when these invaders arrived, Yi Xian could have turned the space inside the cauldron into a sea of fire with a thought. The mountains around the central region's furnace volcano would remain unscathed in the sea of fire, but all the invaders would be suppressed. Of course, that would be too boring. In Yi Xian's opinion, this group of invaders was actually just a plaything he used to pass the time. This was something that even Gong Wuxin and the others didn't realize. Otherwise, who knew what kind of thoughts they would have in their hearts? At this moment, as Yi Xian's spiritual thunder and lightning technique appeared again, in Gong Wuxin and the others' eyes, this young master of the Greedy Wolf clan, who was known as the #1 person among the younger generation of the various clans in the Second Universe Federation, would most likely be suppressed immediately, just like Ji Jinghong and Zhao Ri Tian. In fact, even Yi Xian thought the same. He was quite confident in his spiritual lightning technique, which had already advanced to a high level. Even if it was in existence at the 10th Great Realm, the Heavenly Passage Realm, he was confident that he could injure it. However, the reality made everyone's eyes drop. The Greedy Wolf clan's greedy wolf howls at the moon was indeed extraordinary. Just as a few familiar crackling sounds of lightning were heard in the space inside the cauldron, the hazy moon hanging under the silver light screen in the sky suddenly flashed. Then, the moonlight poured down, and the outline of several thick lightning bolts vaguely appeared in the sky. Moreover, as soon as the outline of the lightning bolts appeared, they completely collapsed and turned into a faintly discernible energy that rapidly shot toward the bright moon in the sky. They were actually swallowed. Wherever the moonlight of the Greedy Wolf shone, all the energy could be swallowed. Although Lang Ganglai hadn't cultivated to the extent that he could use the moon of the Greedy Wolf to swallow all the energy in an instant, in this moonlight area, the more active the energy was, the more likely it was that the moon would sense it and exert its divine power on it, and then the more likely it was to be broken down and swallowed. The lightning bolts were too fast and extremely active, so they were instantly captured and broken down and swallowed. This scene was so unexpected that Yi Xian was stunned. On the ground, Gong Wuxin, Wu Chenzi, and the other prisoners of war opened their mouths wide. Their faces were blank, and they couldn't believe it. Even the invisible lightning bolts manifested by the power of the cauldron were defeated. How terrifying was the greedy wolf clan's moon howls at the moon. This was only because Lang Ganglai had only cultivated it to the initial level. If he mastered it in the future, its power would be even stronger. Among the young geniuses of the three grand universes, who could be his opponent? Being able to swallow energy at any time in battle was already in an invincible position. Following this scene, for the first time, Gong Wuxin, Wu Chenzi, and the others didn't have high hopes for Yi Xian. Only the three girls, Purplish Warbler, Duan Muxiaocha, and Zhao Qianru, acted as if nothing had happened. Although they didn't dare to say that they had seen through all of Yi Xian's abilities, at least they knew that this invisible lightning bolt was not his trump card. It wasn't even his trump card. At most, it was an ability that was quite handy to use. Ha ha ha, Ling Huchong, your invisible lightning bolt is useless against me. In the area illuminated by the moonlight of the moon of the greedy wolf, the more active the energy is, the more likely it is to be instantly detected and captured. Then, it will be broken down and swallowed. The more you use it, the stronger my counterattack will be. In mid-air, Lang Ganglai, who was in the form of a 100-meter-long wolf, raised his head and laughed. He spoke in a human voice. Now, let's try the first round of attacks formed by your own power. Moon of the Wolf Light Vortex. Whoosh. 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 Following Lang Ganglia's final roar, the hazy moon in the sky suddenly shone brightly. Many crescent-shaped light blades fell like rain, swirling and moving in different trajectories. In an instant, thousands of light blades poured down at the same time. Their target was clearly Yi Xian. It seemed like they were going to envelop him in an instant. This is interesting. He can actually swallow my spiritual lightning bolt. But this is good. Since I can't use my divine abilities and spells, and the energy is too active, then I'll just fight him with pure physical strength. It just so happens that I ate a lot of nutritious food before, and my physical strength has increased greatly. I feel like my body is going to explode. Now, I need to vent. Perhaps, I can even break through during the battle. As long as I can reach the 9th realm, origin, perfection, I can kill him with just this pair of fists. Chapter 3345. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Jean Haoyan and Medusa, Puff. Little bastard, this old wolf will tear you apart. Ah, outside the Shenong Cauldron, in the void outside the space trap array, in the direction occupied by the Second Universe's allied forces, an elder of the greedy wolf clan opened his mouth and spat out a blood arrow, followed by a shrill roar and roar. Not far away, several elders from the Inji clan and the barbarian bull clan all cast a sympathetic look at him. It was too sullen. Although Ji Jinghong and Jiao Ri Tian were eaten, at least in the eyes of that little bastard Linghu, they were still worth eating, but now what about Lang Ganglai? He was actually called a fart weasel, and didn't even want to eat him. The dignified greedy wolf clan, ranked in the top 10 among the clans of the Second Universe's Federation, was called a weasel. This was really bad. No wonder the patriarch of the greedy wolf clan was so angry that he spat out blood on the spot. In the void and other directions, all the human powerhouses looked at each other and sighed in their hearts. They were completely convinced by this monstrous young master Linghu. This guy was more than just a master of medicine, tools, and arrays. His combat strength was also incomparably monstrous, and he was comparable to the one who was causing trouble in the cultivation camp. However, these were not his strongest abilities. The most powerful thing about this guy was actually his mouth. Not only could he eat, but he also dared to eat, and he was good at insulting others. The dignified greedy wolf clan was called a fart weasel, and the 15th realm of the Heavenly War Empire, Zhan Tu, was also called an old bastard by him. This kind of monstrous talent was absolutely unprecedented. It was already heaven-defying. In the space inside the cauldron. Boom! Boom! In midair, the glass mecha giant and Lang Ganglai, who had transformed into a 100-meter-long giant wolf, just arrived at a place, and a huge energy explosion sounded from time to time. For a time, the two were evenly matched, and they were evenly matched. Of course, this didn't mean that Yi Xian had met someone who could really suppress him. The supreme power of the little invincible realm was finally thwarted. After all, his cultivation base was only at the 7th stage of the 9th stage, but his opponent was at the 9th stage of the 9th stage, and possessed the powerful bloodline of the greedy wolf clan. Therefore, his combat prowess was almost on par with that of a late-stage grotto heaven expert of the 10th stage without being defeated. From this point of view, Yi Xian was still fighting across realms. Both sides of this battle were terrifying existences. This battle was earth-shattering, and even the horizon was covered by the raging energy storm. Unknowingly, more than 2 minutes had passed, and Yi Xian and Lang Ganglai were exchanging blows, fighting to their heart's content. Weasel, you've made me see you in a new light. Ever since I embarked on the path of physical evolution, this young master has never met an opponent like this. To be able to exchange blows with me in such a vivid manner, this is too satisfying. In the fierce battle, Yi Xian said in a voice that only he and Lang Ganglai could hear, "You're strong enough, and your body is hard enough. Not bad, you're the best training partner. I've decided to keep you alive, but not to eat, but to raise you as a human meat. Bah, it should be wolf meat sandbag, for training." Woo! Lang Ganglai was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood, but he was not good with words, so he could only raise his head and howl to express and vent his anger. After changing his mind, Yi Xian immediately began to move the battlefield slowly. Unknowingly, the two of them had fought above the giant central region furnace volcano in the space inside the cauldron. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly heard a familiar system prompt in his mind. Ding! Congratulations to the host, your physical body has improved. Your current realm is at the 8th stage of the origin. Ding! Congratulations to the host, your physical body has improved. Your current realm is at the 9th stage of the origin. He was immediately overjoyed. Previously, he had eaten a lot of nutritious food, and his physical body's vitality had greatly increased. His cells and genes had also undergone a certain degree of transformation and evolution. He had long felt that his whole body was about to explode, and this was the rhythm of a breakthrough. At this time, after a fierce battle with Lang Ganglai, Yi Xian's vitality surged rapidly as he warmed up. His entire physical body's vitality was mobilized, and he finally broke through the shackles of the human body's potential in one fell swoop, tearing apart 2 invisible shackles. In terms of physical body's vitality, he broke through 2 more barriers and officially stepped into the 9th stage of the origin. Rumble. Boom! The sound of energy explosions continued, but this time, it was not in the outside world, but in Yi Xian's body. As his physical body's vitality broke through 2 stages, Yi Xian's body seemed to have formed a huge river, and the terrifying vitality was surging endlessly. It seemed to have faintly caused the void to resonate with the outside world, and the rumbling of the energy in his body was about to spread to the outside world. What? Do you think this young master wants to raise you and use you as a sandbag in the future? Are you still not convinced? Yi Xian's confidence had increased by 2 stages in an instant. Now, he no longer took Lang Ganglai seriously, and if he was caught off guard, he could definitely knock him out with a punch. Woo! Lang Ganglia's response was still the same, and it was still an angry howl. Howl your ass, my eardrums are damaged. Go down obediently and accompany those 2 good partners of yours. Boom! Yi Xian threw a punch, and at this moment, Lang Ganglai just happened to raise his head and howl angrily. The 30-meter-long mecha's fist, which was larger than a person's body, directly landed on his chin. The terrifying vitality flowed through the fist and into Lang Ganglia's body, and like a roaring river, it instantly gave him a slight concussion and knocked him out on the spot. Woo! This time, the mournful howl from Lang Ganglia's mouth was abruptly stopped, and his huge body fell towards the central region's furnace volcano, and was directly engulfed by the orange flames that rose into the sky from the volcano's mouth, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The reason for this was also Yi Xian's intention. After fainting and falling into this volcano, no matter how one looked at it, Lang Ganglai was definitely going to die. He was going to be burned by the flames until not a single strand of hair was left behind, and he was going to be turned into ashes. But in fact, he was not injured at all. After reaching the bottom of the volcano, he would be locked in another independent small cage like Ji Jinghong and Jiao Ri Tian. No matter whether it was his aura or roar, he would not be able to escape. It was also at this moment that Lang Gonglia's huge body was smashed down by Yi Xian's punch, and disappeared into the volcano's mouth below. At the same time, from several directions in the distance, there were a total of 10 people, and they were the other members of this second universe's young prodigy hunting team. The leader was the young master of the Golden Eagle clan, Jin Haoyan, who was as famous as Ji Jinghong, Jiao Ri Tian, and Lang Ganglai, and the princess of the Colored Python clan, Medusa. Chapter 3346. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. The Great Chaotic War outside the cauldron. Following the death of the young master of the Greedy Wolf clan, Lang Ganglai, the surrounding void once again fell into chaos. Awu. Awu, in the void occupied by the Second Universe's allied forces, the elder of the Greedy Wolf clan was furious. The entire void was filled with his crazy wolf howls, which made people's hair stand on end. However, the human powerhouses in other directions were already used to it. They shook their heads and sighed, muttering to themselves that this time, the Second Universe's allied forces would probably be wiped out. They actually quite approved of young Master Ling Hu's cruelty in their hearts. At least, he didn't kill the previous human prodigies. However, he didn't show any mercy to the prodigies from the Second Universe's various clans. Those guys were incomparably arrogant. Previously, they had openly said that they looked down on the human race. Now that they had ended up like this, although the surrounding human powerhouses didn't clap and cheer, they still felt quite happy in their hearts. Based on this point alone, their impression of young Master Ling Hu improved slightly. Of course, everyone knew in their hearts that the reason he did this was not to show goodwill to the human race. The key was that the desire for good food was acting up. When he saw this group of animals from the Second Universe's various clans, he directly drooled. In the face of Lang Gonglia's death and the appearance of Jin Haoyan, Medusa, and the others, the elders of the Golden Eagle clan and the Colored Python clan, as well as the other 8 prodigies from the Second Universe's various clans, all had their hearts in their mouths at this moment. They had both hope and worry. They hoped that now that the 10 of them had finally gathered, they might really be able to suppress the cruel and hateful young Master Ling Hu. What he was worried about was that these 10 fellows would be like Ji Jinghong and the other 2 from before, being too arrogant and engaging in some kind of one-on-one duel. If that happened, they would really be completely annihilated. Fortunately, an angry roar came from the silver light curtain, which made them feel slightly relieved. Jin Haoyan and Medusa roared at the same time, and the 10 figures rushed up together. Unfortunately, what happened next was too unexpected. In an instant, the hearts of the elders of the various clans in the Second Universe's federation were completely in their throats, at the same time, in the cauldron space. The young master of the Golden Eagle clan, Jin Haoyan, and the princess of the Colored Python clan, Medusa, both roared furiously. This fellow is too savage, simply hateful. Taking advantage of the fact that we haven't arrived yet, he actually used his superior numbers to deal with Ji Jinghong, Jiao Ri Tian, and Lang Ganglai in succession. Everyone, attack together. That's right. There's no need to talk about mercy with these human ants. Blood for blood. Today, no one here can escape. The 10 of us will definitely suppress all of you. As the 2 of them roared, the 10 young masters and young masters from the Federation of the Second Universe all roared at the sky. They activated their blood and manifested their blood bodies. Jin Haoyan was a giant golden eagle that was thousands of meters long like Ji Zhan. He was comparable to Ji Jinghong, and Yi Xian's eyes immediately turned green when he saw him. As for Medusa, she was a giant mottled python that was over 1,000 feet long. She looked extremely frightening. She flicked her tongue that was several feet long, and Yi Xian shuddered when he saw her. Although her bloodline was definitely extraordinary, Yi Xian was wary of this kind of vicious beauty and didn't really like it. Thus, after thinking for a moment, he directly gave up on it and decided to suppress it instead of stealing the heavens and changing his mouth to raise it himself. The other 8 fellows were basically all huge in size. Although they didn't come from the top 10 clans in the second universe like Ji Jinghong and Zhao Ri Tian, their cultivation wasn't weak either. Their blood was also extraordinary. At this time, the 10 giant beasts covered a small part of the sky. After manifesting their blood bodies, the 10 giant beasts immediately roared downwards. Jin Haoyan and Medusa pounced towards Yi Xian. Although more than half of the other 8 giant beasts did the same, 2 of them pounced towards Gong Wuxin, Wu Chenzi, and the others on the ground. They were clearly going to suppress the younger generation of the human race in one fell swoop. This is too much. What does it have to do with us? You're just from the outer realm. How dare you behave so atrociously in our territory? Don't you think you're too arrogant? They look down on the human race. They deserve to be beaten. Everyone, let's join forces and suppress them. That's right. These guys are shameless anyway. Just now, it was clearly Ling Huchong who was fighting alone, but he said we were outnumbered. Since he said that, how can we be wronged? Let's just give him the outnumbered version. Kill. As he wishes, let's torture these foreign beasts. Seeing that 2 giant beasts were charging towards them, intending to suppress them together, Gong Wuxin, Wu Chenzi, and the other prisoners were all angry. They had been holding it in before, but now they couldn't hold it in anymore. In an instant, more than 200 figures rushed into the sky together. This time, even the purplish warbler, Duanmu Xiaocha, and Zhao Qianru didn't fall behind. They also attacked. Although these guys had been injured by Yi Xian before, it had been a long time. Under the condition of taking healing medicine, even if they hadn't fully recovered, they had basically recovered. Moreover, they had all eaten some roast beef just now, which was also a kind of supplement. At this time, more than 200 prisoners, who had basically recovered most of their combat power, rushed into the sky at the same time. All kinds of treasures were summoned, and in the blink of an eye, they fought fiercely with the 10-second universe giant beasts that covered a small part of the sky above. Roar. Screech. Roar, rumble. Angry roars shook the sky, mixed with a lot of energy explosions. In an instant, this part of the sky was occupied by a huge battlefield. The 10 giant beasts from the various races of the second universe were fighting more than 200 young elites of the human race. The scene was extremely chaotic. Every minute, every second, there was a rain of blood pouring down. Soon after, the ground below was dyed red. This was basically the blood of the 10 giant beasts from the second universe. Their bodies were big enough that even if they bled, they would still be able to bleed for a long time. After suffering such injuries, they were completely fine. Instead, they fought fiercely. Although the 10 giant beasts all had powerful combat power that could fight above their level, in the face of more than 200 human powerhouses who were on par with them in terms of cultivation realm, they were in a situation where they were suppressed. All of them were in a sorry state. But even so, the prisoners of war had no intention of stopping. Anyway, everyone was fighting side by side. Moreover, this group of so-called young masters from the second universe was too arrogant and provoked them first. In addition, the law didn't punish the majority. Even if a few were killed on the spot, they wouldn't be punished too severely. Chapter 3347. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Another one tricked. Flaming Eagle Plume. Blazing Python Rainbow. In the chaotic battlefield in the cauldron, the young master of the Golden Eagle clan, Jin Haoyan, and the princess of the Colored Python clan, Medusa, were furious. They roared at the same time. This was the rhythm of both of them activating their bloodline abilities. Previously, the moon of the Greedy Wolf in the sky had disappeared after Lang Ganglai, the young master of the Greedy Wolf clan, was defeated and suppressed. However, at this moment, as Jin Haoyan and Medusa activated their bloodline abilities and fully activated them, two different phenomena appeared in the sky above the chaotic battlefield. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Whoosh! Jin Haoyan's falcon plume flaming rain was a rain of energy arrows formed by countless golden feathers. After he revealed his true bloodline body, Ji Haoyan's wingspan was close to 10,000 meters, comparable to Ji Jinghong. Such a huge golden eagle was covered with countless golden feathers. Right now, as Jin Haoyan fully activated the Golden Eagle clan's flaming eagle plume, a small part of the sky was instantly illuminated. Every energy feather was shining with a golden light. Not only was there light, but there were also faint flames rising from them. This was clearly a powerful area of effect attack, but in Jin Haoyan's eyes, the only existence that posed a threat to him was Yi Xian. Therefore, this was originally an area of effect attack of the Golden Eagle clan's bloodline ability. Countless golden flame feathers rained down from the sky, covering the sky and covering the earth as they whistled towards the glazed mecha giant. As for the colored Python clan's Princess Medusa's blazing Python rainbow bloodline ability, it was two intense rainbow-colored beams of light. Although they did not seem shocking, the two dreamlike rainbow-colored beams of light shot out from Medusa's eyes at an extremely fast speed. There was even a strange sizzling sound in the void. It was as if boiling oil was poured into an ice field and was rapidly melting. Whoosh! In the next instant, a young prodigy from a certain top-notch family in the science and technology faction was darting about in the midst of the fierce battle. He unwittingly crossed the path of one of the two rainbow-colored blazing lights that was heading for Yi Xian. Yi Xian's rainbow blaze, which had been aimed at Yi Xian, ended up hitting this unlucky guy instead. A bright light flashed in Yi Xian's eyes as he locked his attention on this fellow. For some reason, the two seven-colored blazing lights that shot out from Medusa's eyes gave him a rather dangerous feeling. However, Yi Xian had no idea how powerful it was. He was paying close attention to it in order to investigate this matter. In his line of sight, the guy who was accidentally hit by one of the seven-colored blazing lights suddenly froze. Then, his whole body began to stiffen and petrify at a speed visible to the naked eye. The whole process was extremely fast. In just a breath's time, this unlucky guy's entire body had completely turned into a gray stone statue. There was no trace of life in him at all. He fell to the ground like a human-shaped rock. There was no doubt that when this human-shaped stone statue came into contact with the ground below, the result would definitely be a loud collapse. The unlucky guy's body would shatter into pieces of stone. He would definitely be deader than dead. F***CK. This is too insidious. Yi Xian was shocked and subconsciously cursed. He quickly moved and dodged the other streak of seven-colored blazing light. At the same time, he turned his head to look at Medusa, who had revealed her bloodline true form, which was a huge colored python. A hint of annoyance flashed in the latter's eyes at this moment. Her eyes stared at Yi Xian tightly, revealing a strong hatred, but she did not shoot out a similar seven-colored blazing light again. Yi Xian understood in his heart. It seemed that although this kind of magic was powerful and strange, it must have a limit. Just like the cooldown period of the energy cannon, after using it once, it had to wait for a period of time before it could be used again. It could not be used continuously. In that case, there was nothing to be afraid of. Yi Xian would not give her a chance to shoot out such a terrifying seven-colored blazing light again. Boom! With a flash of his figure, Yi Xian's figure had already arrived in front of the huge colored python in the blink of an eye. After a punch, the sound of bones cracking could be heard. A small part of the huge colored python's body was severely injured. Many bones were broken. It let out a wail and fell to the ground below. At this moment, the rain of golden feathers that covered the heavens and covered the earth had finally arrived. Yi Xian was not afraid at all. As if he did not see it, he allowed the feather-shaped flame rain filled with golden flames to fall on the surface of the glazed mech, but it did not leave a single mark. After all, it was a quasi-starry sky treasure level. If it could not even block the energy flame rain cast by the 9th Realm Origin 7th Order Perfection opponent, then it would be too disappointing. Now it's my turn. Seeing that Jin Haoyan's bloodline magic was useless against him, Yi Xian was completely relieved. A sinister smile appeared on his face. He whispered and rushed towards the opponent. This time, he even activated the glazed mech's antimatter energy thruster, doubling his speed. His whole body was like a purple flowing arrow. Jin Haoyan could not dodge at all. In less than half a breath, Yi Xian had already appeared on the back of the giant golden eagle. Get the hell down, you! Crack! Crack! Boom! As he shouted, Yi Xian directly activated the spiritual source core in his brain. The spiritual thunder technique that had been used many times before was displayed again. This time, 3 invisible thunderbolts bit the tail and all of them struck the back of the giant golden eagle's head. If it did not faint after this, then it would be unreasonable. However, Yi Xian still felt that it was not safe. This golden eagle's feathers were as hard as steel. If it did not faint, then it would be really troublesome. To be safe, Yi Xian threw a punch with all his strength and smashed it directly on Jin Haoyan's back. A huge energy explosion erupted, followed by a wail. Ji Zhan's giant golden eagle, which was 10,000 meters long, fainted without any suspense. Its huge body followed in the footsteps of Ji Jinghong and Jiao Ri Tian, falling towards the central region's furnace volcano below as if it was aiming at something. This was the 3rd time Yi Xian had done this. Previously, Ji Jinghong and Jiao Ri Tian had both done this. Now, he had successfully captured another golden eagle. Very quickly, the enormous body of the falling giant golden eagle was engulfed by the orange flames that soared into the sky from the central region's furnace volcano. In the eyes of the experts in the outside world, falling into the depths of such a scorching volcano would definitely result in not leaving a single hair behind. Yi Xian had once again deceived the heavens and the sea. Screech! A woo! Following the fall of Jin Haoyan, the other 9 giant dire beasts roared or wailed. Even Medusa, who had been smashed to the ground by Yi Xian and had now returned to her human form, was no exception. After a fierce howl, she viciously stabbed at Yi Xian in the sky, then turned around and fled. When they saw that Medusa was already in such a state, and that Jin Haoyan was already finished, the other 8 dire beasts instantly lost their will to fight. As if they had agreed to it, they all reverted back to their original bloodline forms and became smaller targets as they scattered in all directions. Chapter 33-48. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. If you don't redeem yourself in 3 days, I'll eat you. You can't escape. I've adjusted the internal field of this star cauldron. Although those below the first level of the grotto heaven can enter, they can't leave. If you don't believe me, you can try. Don't blame me if you get killed by the 9-colored mist at the mouth of the cauldron. Seeing that the 9 young masters and princesses from the various races of the Federation of the Second Universe wanted to escape, Yi Xian sneered. He didn't intend to chase them at all. He stood still and warned them loudly, now you only have one way to go. Before I change my mind, come here and surrender immediately. Since you saved me the effort of capturing you, I'll spare you some physical pain. As long as you behave, I promise I won't eat you. Otherwise, once I catch you one by one, it's hard to say what will happen to you. I won't eat your meat, but I'm sure you'll suffer some physical pain, broken bones, and broken tendons. Think carefully. I've always been an impatient person. I'll only wait for 3 minutes. I won't wait after that. After he finished speaking, Yi Xian turned around and looked at the 200-plus prisoners that had gathered behind him because the battle had ended. He loudly ordered, those who haven't returned in 3 minutes, capture them all. If there's any resistance, kill them all on the spot. This young master is to blame. Hearing this, Wu Chenzi, Gong Wuxin, and the others shook their heads and smiled bitterly. The 8 great Vajras, on the other hand, responded loudly. It was obvious that they were deeply immersed in their role and had even trained to be henchmen. Rumble, as soon as Yi Xian finished speaking, a violent burst of energy came from the distant sky. A young master from a certain race of the Federation of the Second Universe didn't believe it and rushed toward the atmosphere formed by the 9-colored mist in the sky. As a result, he was directly blown to pieces. His whole body turned into a cloud of blood and instantly died. This scene was so shocking that the other 8 people were instantly shocked. They stopped at the same time and turned to look at Yi Xian. Ling Huchong, do you really want to become enemies with all the races of the second universe? The little princess of the colored python tribe, Medusa, was so angry that her nose was crooked. She had never felt so sullen before. She had failed in her hunt and was being abused instead. Now, she couldn't even leave and was forced to surrender to her prey. She had never thought that something like this would happen to her today. It was too hurtful to her pride. You shameless little girl. Aren't you ashamed to say such things? Yi Xian was instantly enraged. He raised his hand and pointed at Medusa. You brats traveled billions of miles from the second universe to come here. What did I do to offend you? Now that you're no match for me, you actually dare to reprimand me for being your enemy? Did you not consider this question before coming here? As soon as he finished speaking, Yi Xian's figure had already leaped up and rushed straight toward Medusa and the other 8 people. Even the Glaze Mech's antimatter energy thruster had been activated. His entire body turned into a flowing arrow that couldn't be seen with the naked eye. He instantly arrived in front of Medusa. As he roared, he threw a punch. Congratulations, little girl. Your words just now successfully pissed me off. Now, I've changed my mind. The 3-minute time limit is cancelled. I won't accept voluntary surrender anymore. I'm going to beat all of you up one by one. I'll start with you. Boom. Kachacha, as he spoke, Yi Xian's right fist had already thrown out. The Glaze Mech was 30 meters tall, and his fist was bigger than a person. It suddenly landed on Medusa's body, and the sound of bones shattering could be heard. She was caught off guard and was hit squarely on the head. She spat out blood and fainted on the spot. The other 7 people were shocked. Without another word, they turned around and ran. They had just gathered, but when they saw the danger approaching, they scattered like birds and beasts. Ha ha ha, are these the so-called young patriarchs and geniuses from the various races of the second universe? In my opinion, they are clearly a group of motley crew. They turned around and ran without saying a word. Moreover, their movements are so skillful. This isn't the first time, right? Yi Xian raised his head and laughed. Before he finished laughing, he had already chased after them. The Glaze Mech's antimatter energy thruster was still active. His entire body turned into an arrow that could not be seen by the naked eye, flying in all directions. Every time he caught up, he would directly raise his arm and throw a punch. Then, the sound of bones cracking could be heard. In less than 3 minutes, the remaining 8 geniuses of the second universe, including Medusa, were all knocked out. There was no exception. It seems that it's faster to do it yourself. It hasn't even been 3 minutes. Yi Xian stopped and swept his gaze across the 8 people who had fallen to the ground. As he spoke, he turned his head and looked at Wu Chenzi, Gong Wuxin, and the others, who were already dumbfounded in the distance. What are you waiting for? I don't keep idle people under me. Remember to be smart in the future. I am in charge of beating people, and you are in charge of collecting the spoils and taking in the prisoners of war. Before he could finish speaking, the 8 great guardian deities had already walked over eagerly. The other 200 or so prodigies of the great clans hesitated for a moment, but in the end, they gritted their teeth and followed behind. Very soon, they carried Medusa and the other 8 back and threw them on a small hill, where they lay on the ground. Your cultivation level is actually at the 9th level of the origin? As soon as Yi Xian's figure arrived, Gong Wuxin stared at him with a strange expression and muttered with a little hesitation and fear. When Yi Xian's cultivation level was only at the 7th level of the origin, it was enough to completely destroy him. Now that he had reached the 9th level of the origin, it was obviously easier for him. It was estimated that with a punch, most of the bones in his body would be broken on the spot, and he would not be able to move for half a day. No wonder he was able to knock out Medusa and the other 8 young masters from the various clans of the second universe in less than 3 minutes. It should be known that these 8 fellows all had the powerful bloodline of ancient beasts, and the density was extremely high. Their chi and blood were enormous, and their bodies were as hard as a rock. These were their common characteristics. At the same cultivation level, even Gong Wuxin and the other geniuses of the human race would need 3 or 4 people to fight against them. However, under Yi Xian's iron fist, they were as weak as lambs. In comparison, the latter was more like a ferocious beast that swept all directions with his fist. They were all from the human race, but the gap between them was so huge. This was a blow to Gong Wuxin and the others, and they began to doubt their lives. Yes, I had a good fight with that weasel just now. My muscles and bones were completely stretched, and I accidentally broke through to the next level. Awesome. Yi Xian grinned and casually brushed this matter aside. Then, ignoring the stunned expressions of Gong Wuxin, Wu Chenzi, and the others, he turned his head and swept his gaze over the silver light curtain that covered a small part of the sky above his head. Pointing at the little princess of the colored python clan, Medusa, and the others who were still unconscious on the slope, he rolled his eyes and shouted, "Old bastards from the second universe, listen up. Send all the spirit herbs, spirit medicines, and rare minerals that this young master needs as soon as possible. The more the better." Chapter 3349. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations, the #1 foodie in the world. The time limit is only 3 days. I won't wait any longer. After 3 days, I will stew these 8 little bastards in one pot. Pft. Pft. Outside the Shinong cauldron, in the corner of the void occupied by the Second Universe's coalition forces, as Yi Xian's words came out through the silver light curtain above the formation, there were immediately sounds of spitting blood, one after another. The elders of the various clans of the Second Universe who were in charge of leading the team were all furious. Previously, when Yi Xian suppressed and even killed Ji Jinghong and the other young masters of the various clans of the Second Universe in a short period of time, this group of old guys was already full of anger and almost exploded. At this moment, when they heard that Yi Xian actually wanted to use this matter to blackmail the various clans, they didn't want to obey and directly stew their young masters in one pot. Coupled with the words, "old bastard," the group of elders finally couldn't bear it anymore and completely exploded. I'm going to kill this old man. Ling Hu Chong, this old man will skin you alive. Damn this broken cauldron, it's as hard as a turtle shell. Even the 15th realm of the universe can't break it and can't enter to kill this bastard. I hate it. In anger, the void occupied by the Second Universe's coalition forces was disturbed by the thunderous roars of the elders of various clans. The airflow was turbulent, and the wind was fierce. Seeing this scene, all the human clan masters who were guarding in other directions were collectively petrified. They now had a clearer understanding of young Master Ling Hu's monstrous level. It was just one person, but he had made the elders of more than a dozen clans so angry that they all vomited blood and went crazy. A small part of the void was trembling. This kind of ability was probably only him. Later, when these human clan masters came back to their senses, exclamations and exclamations that were deliberately suppressed sounded one after another. He defies the natural order of things. Young Master Ling Hu is definitely challenging an era. He's alone, and he's suppressing 2 major dimensions. The younger generation of the human race and the Second Universe's various races are all being suppressed by him alone. He's really a peerless monster. This kind of momentum is already invincible. Even the invincible war god, who is tormenting the cultivator camp and still can't be determined whose clone it is, will be overshadowed by him. That's right, young Master Ling Hu is fully deserving of the human clan's #1. Unfortunately, he's too arrogant and doesn't have a sense of honor for the clan. And clan's honor. The human clan's younger generation? I don't think so. Don't forget that there's still Prince Xian. Although he hasn't made any moves recently, which one of the previous incidents was weaker than this? Even the 6th 10 out. 10 is his translations? Isn't the invincible war god still causing a ruckus in the cultivator camp? We still can't determine whose clone it is. If it's confirmed that it's Prince Xian's clone, then the title of the #1 of the younger generation will belong to him. Even a clone can be considered a peerless monster. Do we even need to talk about the main body? If the main body and the clone work together, they will definitely crush young Master Linghu. If they want him to admit defeat, boom. Rumble. While the human clan masters were whispering to each other and discussing animatedly, the dozen or so small fortresses and space fortresses of the Second Universe's Alliance army in the void were unexpectedly activated and rapidly moved in the direction of the Tianshan nation. Obviously, they were afraid and decided to compromise with Yi Xian. Otherwise, the 8 young masters of the Second Universe's various clans, including the little princess of the colored python clan, Medusa, would be stewed in a pot. That kind of scene was too beautiful and too demonic. If it really happened, the various clans of the Second Universe's alliance would be too ashamed to live in the world. Although this was too shocking and ordinary people would definitely not do it, young Master Linghu was definitely not one of them. Didn't he already eat 2 of them before? Other than the Greedy Wolf clan's young Master Lang Ganglai, the Golden Eagle clan's young Master Jin Haoyan, the Silver Eagle clan's young Master Ji Jinghong, and the Barbarian Bull clan's young Master Ri Tian, none of them were spared. They were all killed and their flesh was roasted. It was a tragic sight. The reason these old fellows were rushing to the Tianshan nation was because they wanted to connect the Tier 3-star network of the Tianshan nation to the Tier 1-star network of the Immortal Dynasty. They wanted to open a wormhole transmission channel and send all kinds of heaven and earth treasures and rare minerals that Yi Xian needed from the various clans of the Second Universe. Of course, this kind of wormhole transmission consumed a lot of energy. Even they would feel the pinch. However, they couldn't care less now. In order to prevent Medusa and the others from being stewed in a pot, they could only grit their teeth and swallow the price no matter how high it was. Looking at the huge army of the Second Universe leaving quickly, Tuoba Xiong, Gong Yang Buhui, and Chang Yu Jinglong looked at each other and raised their hands to wipe the cold sweat off their foreheads. At this time, they were very scared, especially Tuoba Xiong. Luckily, young Master Linghu didn't stay in the Tuoba family all the time and left on his own initiative. Otherwise, with this young master's great appetite and the world's #1 foodie temper, if there wasn't enough food like braised dragon liver and brown sauce in the future, it was hard to guarantee that he wouldn't pick some white and tender existences from the Tuoba family and secretly wash them clean and cook them. It was too cruel and too terrifying. Thinking of this, Tuoba Xiong almost raised his hand to slap himself. He was really muddle-headed before. He actually wanted to force that guy to stay in the Tuoba family. Luckily, he failed. Otherwise, he would have invited a wolf into the house. Moreover, it was a hungry wolf that could eat people. Fortunately, the allies of the Second Universe sent a group of young masters and young masters with strong bloodlines. After shivering, Tuoba Xiong's face was full of relief. It was probably because those powerful elders from the Second Universe had left in a hurry that this old man dared to say anything without hiding anything. I think after that monster tasted this kind of top-grade ingredient, he probably doesn't care about the braised dragon liver anymore. I don't think he will come to harm us again, Tuoba Xiong said. Tuoba Xiong's face was full of joy. Bodhisattva, if this monster isn't killed this time, don't let him stay in the human race's territory. If he wants to go to the Second Universe. The universe there is full of descendants of all kinds of divine birds and fierce beasts. If he wants to eat, he can eat as much as he wants. After that, the people in charge of the big families and forces in the human race's camp began to communicate with each other and get busy. Although Gong Wuxin, Wu Chenzi, and the other captives of the human race didn't have to worry about being stewed and eaten by young Master Linghu, that guy was too cruel. If he didn't get the ransom, it was very likely that he would cripple or kill them. He would definitely do this kind of thing. In the eyes of these people in charge of the big families and forces, Yi Xian was definitely going to die this time. Soon, the day when ancestor Qingquan of the Zhan family returned would be the day he would be beheaded. Therefore, in terms of the ransom, the big families were very generous. After all, it was just a matter of passing through their hands. Once this guy died, they would immediately return to their hands. Chapter 3350. Translator, Nyoibo Studio Editor, Nyoibo Studio. They re all in this together. Inside the cauldron. After confirming that the inner field of the Shenong cauldron was already under Yi Xian's control, even the experts below the 10th level of the heavenly passage could only enter. After confirming that the inner field of the Shenong cauldron was already under Yi Xian's control, even the experts below the 10th level of the heavenly passage could only enter and not leave. In the end, the few people who had acted alone or escaped from the great battle obediently gathered together. After all, if they wanted to leave the farmer god cauldron, they would have to go through Yi Xian. If they kept hiding in the distance and angered the ferocious young master Linghu, they would be locked up in the cauldron space forever. That would be troublesome. Half a day later, the 8 heavens prides of the Federation of the Second Universe, including the little princess of the colored python clan, Medusa, finally woke up one after another. As for their storage magic treasures and cultivation resources, everything was naturally plundered and stored in Yi Xian's undying world. Seeing that these guys had woken up, Yi Xian casually threw a small bottle of healing medicine to each of them. At the very least, he had to let them regain their mobility. Otherwise, when the ransom arrived, would he have to support them and send them out? Watch these 8 guys carefully. This young master wants to go into seclusion to make a breakthrough. If they don't behave, just beat them up. If they die, it's on me. After everything was settled, Yi Xian waved his hand and gave a few instructions to Gong Wuxin, Wu Chenzi, and the others. Then, he was about to leave. Just as he was about to turn around, he saw the purplish warbler, Duan Muxiaocha, and Zhao Qianru staring at him. Because of the silver light curtain in the sky, the 3 girls didn't dare to exchange glances to avoid being seen through. However, Yi Xian knew them very well. With just a glance, he understood the 3 girls' thoughts. At first, he wanted to ignore them, but then he thought that if he did, he would definitely be punished. Helplessly, he could only sigh and pretend to suddenly think of something. He turned his head and looked at the 3 women. After looking them up and down, he waved his hand and said, "You 3, come with this young master. You need someone to wait on you even if you want to serve tea or water." Although these words fulfilled the wishes of the purplish warbler girls, they didn't feel good. The 3 girls' faces immediately darkened. They weren't pretending, they were really a little annoyed. "How dare you ask me to serve tea and water? Okay, you're good, young master Zhao Qianru, huh?" The 3 girls exchanged glances and muttered in their hearts. They were thinking about how they would deal with Yi Xian's. As for Gong Wuxin, Wu Chen, and the others, after being stunned for a moment, their expressions instantly became strange. They glanced at Yi Xian, then looked at Xianyuan Ziying and the other 2 girls, who had faces full of shame and indignation. They all sighed. In their opinion, Yi Xian must be up to no good by suddenly taking the 3 purplish warbler girls away. It was a pity that these 3 delicate beauties were about to be taken by a pig. What a scourge. Then, Yi Xian quickly left with the 3 purplish warbler girls. Gong Wu Xian, Wu Chenzi, and the others couldn't leave anyway, so he wasn't afraid that they would run away. Although there weren't any buildings in the space inside the farmer god cauldron, Yi Xian had refined the entire cauldron. The field inside the cauldron could be changed according to his will, so it wouldn't be difficult for him to create a temporary cave residence. Considering the existence of the silver light curtain in the sky, Yi Xian took the 3 purplish warbler girls into a dense ancient forest and directly went underground. From there, they came to the depths of the furnace volcano in the central region. The furnace volcano looked like a ring-shaped volcano from the outside, but the structure inside was actually the same. The deeper one went, the wider it became. When they reached the deepest part of the volcano, they could no longer see any flames, but it was not dark. The orange-red flames above were like a canopy. The flames illuminated the bottom of the furnace volcano very brightly. Moreover, it was a pleasing orange-red color. The bottom of the furnace volcano was like a vast plain, with no end in sight. In the center was a large lake surrounded by 9-colored mist. This lake should be the core of the furnace volcano. The roots of the orange-red flames extended from the lake and expanded upwards like a mushroom cloud. Presumably, the 2-colored flames to the 9-colored flames in the future should be the same. Even Yi Xian couldn't completely understand the 9-colored lake in the central region, but other than that, he could control the other areas at the bottom of the furnace volcano at will. At this moment, he had constructed 5 independent spaces on the walls of the volcano with his thoughts. 1 small space and 4 big spaces. The small space was sealed, without any gap, and the immortal and imperishable bead was placed inside. As for the 4 big spaces, they were like cages, imprisoning Ji Jinghong, Jiao Ri Tian, Lang Ganglai, and Jin Haoyan respectively. At present, the 4 of them had all woken up, and were roaring loudly. From time to time, there was a loud roar of bombardment on the walls. Unfortunately, all of this was in vain. The walls at the bottom of the furnace volcano were equivalent to the walls of the farmer god cauldron. This was a primitive treasure. Even the 15th level of the universe realm couldn't leave a scratch on it. If Yi Xian didn't agree, they would never be able to get out. Although they were making a lot of noise now, after a long time, they would all die. At this moment, Xianyuan Ziying and the other 2 girls followed behind Yi Xian and entered the space at the bottom of the volcano. With a glance, they saw Ji Jinghong's group of 4 imprisoned within the rock wall cage. After being stunned for a moment, they immediately cried out in alarm, "Eh? These 4 guys are here? And they are all locked up. After all this time, you didn't kill them? With your gluttonous nature, how could you be willing to waste such a good top-grade ingredient? You just cut a small piece and roasted it for a taste. After all, it turns out that you just want to raise it and eat it slowly. That's a good idea. If you're hungry, you cut a piece to go with wine. Anyway, it'll grow back in a few days. You'll never be able to finish it. But, why did you keep that weasel as well? Meat is smelly. Can you eat it? If you keep it here, be careful not to smoke the birds, cows, and eagles. They are so delicious. It would be a pity if the meat is smelly." The 3 girls only said 1 sentence each, but their lethality couldn't be underestimated. Yi Xian was scared out of his wits as he stared at them with his mouth agape. His entire mind was muddled. This mouth. Wasn't it too poisonous? As for Ji Jinghong and the other 3 imprisoned in cages, they instantly went berserk and roared like crazy. Especially Lang Ganglai. This time, he was really looked down upon too much. His whole body was about to explode. He slammed his head on the wall and was furious. "Ah, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you." Bang, bang, bang. Chapter 3351. Chapter 3351, Chapter 335 Heavenly Cave, Stop Messing Around. The rock wall at the bottom of this furnace volcano is equivalent to the wall of the Shenong cauldron. This cauldron is an ancient treasure. Even if the 15th Great Realm Master comes, he won't be able to leave even a scratch on it. Even if you crack your head, you won't be able to move it even a little bit. It was probably because the 4 of them had suffered too much shock that Yi Xian gave them a rare few words of consolation. As for the matter of eating you, you can rest assured that this young master has no such intention. Although the reason why I kept the 4 of you here was because of the bloodline in your body, this young master didn't do it to satisfy my appetite. Instead, it was to refine medicine. In the future, when I need it, I'll ask you to give me some blood or cut off some liver or kidney for this young master. Unfortunately, the effect of his words of consolation was truly speechless, and actually backfired. When Ji Jinghong and the others heard that Yi Xian actually planned to raise them and bleed them one by one in the future, and from time to time, they would have to cut off a piece of liver, a piece of kidney, or something like that for him to use as medicine, they immediately went crazy. Their roars became even more intense. "Ah, kill you. This father will kill you. Demon, you are a demon from head to toe. I'd rather die than become your living medicine. Ling Huchong, just give up. If worse comes to worst, I'll just blow myself up," Ling Huchong said. While roaring, a majestic and chaotic aura gushed out of Jiao Ri's body. It seemed that he was really ready to self-detonate. Explode. Explode if you have the ability. Don't forget that this is this young master's territory. Even if you explode into a bloody mist, it won't be a waste. This young master can collect it with a thought, put it in a bottle, and use it slowly in the future. Yi Xian curled his lips and didn't accept the threat at all. He sneered and said, "Moreover, this young master wants something. How can I be satisfied if I don't get it? If you dare to self-detonate, this young master will immediately run to your barbarian bull tribe if this young master can survive this disaster." I believe that the barbarian bull tribe should have more than one son, right? When the time comes, we'll skewer all of your brothers and sisters and let them bleed one by one every day. Besides, do you think you still have the ability to self-destruct after being locked in this young master's Shinong cauldron? Be careful that you don't die from self-detonation and end up half dead. You'll slowly recover, but in the end, you'll still have to obediently bleed. Sigh, you can do whatever you want if you want. After saying that, Yi Xian waved his hand and sealed the rock cage that imprisoned the four of them. Not a single sound could be heard. Similarly, they could not sense anything outside the cage, whether it was sound or sight. However, Yi Xian did not calm down because of this, because in the next moment, the three purplish warbler girls started to cause a ruckus. Of the three girls, two of them were tugging at his arms and swinging him left and right, while the last one was standing in front of Yi Xian, pounding her little fists on his chest like she was hammering a stake. Shinong cauldron? You said this is the Shinong cauldron? That's a legendary primordial treasure, right? We're doomed, we're doomed. We've really hit the jackpot this time, to be able to randomly pick up such a treasure in the void. We've earned big this time, we have to share the spoils. We have to share the spoils. Yes, yes, yes. As the saying goes, those who see it have a share. The last time you entered the Shinong cauldron, we went together and even covered for you, not revealing your identity. In the end, you got such a huge benefit, but we didn't get anything. This is too unreasonable, we have to compensate you, but this Shinong cauldron is a whole, you can't just cut off a piece and take it away. In this case, the cauldron can be yours, but you have to show some appreciation in other aspects, such as, in addition to the battle armor, you have to help us upgrade our small private warships. That's right, we're all familiar with each other, so we'll let it go this time, but you can't cut corners. You have to have all kinds of arrays, especially that killing array system. My brother, you're amazing. I didn't expect you to be a Grandmaster Array Master, to even be able to come up with such a battleship killing array system. After all this time, it turned out that the three girls were waiting for him here. Yi Xian finally understood and immediately shook his head with a bitter smile. He spread his hands and said, "It's not impossible to help you fuse your small private warships, but you have to let me do it one by one, right? I haven't finished the battle armor from before, and this is only the first fusion. The materials you gave me for the second fusion are still there, so I have to finish the battle armor first before we talk about the warships, right?" Hearing this, the three maidservants exploded on the spot, and once again began to chatter noisily. What? You haven't used the materials for the second fusion? We've already brought the treasures and materials for the third fusion this time, aren't you too slow? You can't slack off like this, you have to work overtime. That's right, the situation today is special, so I won't force you, but the next time we meet, the third fusion must be completed. Otherwise, we'll settle everything at once. In the end, Yi Xian could only pat his chest and promise that after this matter was over, he would finish the third fusion first. The next time they met, the three battle armors would have all been fused for the third time. Otherwise, they would be at the mercy of others. As a result, the three maidservants finally stopped bothering him and didn't continue to pester him. By the way, you said you were going to make a breakthrough in seclusion? Then, the purplish warbler changed the topic and asked Yi Xian with a strange expression, "Didn't you just make a breakthrough in the battle? And it's 2 consecutive breakthroughs, from the origin level 7 to the perfection level 9. Why are you breaking through again so soon? You're in such a hurry, be careful that your realm is unstable. Besides, it's not that easy to make a breakthrough in a major realm, it depends on luck. You seem to be a little too hasty. Do you think I want to?" Yi Xian rolled his eyes and smiled bitterly. "My cultivation has always been stagnant, and now I'm still at the black hole level 1. The breakthrough I'm talking about now is the path of physical evolution, and I'm relying on the gene cultivation fluid to make a breakthrough. Now, my physical body is at the perfection level 9 of the origin level 9, and I've prepared more than 1 bottle of the level 10 fluid. I can take it at any time to make a breakthrough. Once I succeed, I'll immediately advance to the Grotto Heaven Level 1, the 10th major realm. Of course, that's in terms of physical body strength. What? You're walking the path of physical evolution? And you even have the level 10 fluid? Duanmu Xiaocha jumped up immediately and spread her big hand in front of Yi Xian. I wanted to try it, but I was worried that there wouldn't be any more level 10 fluid after reaching the 9th level. Since you have it, share it with me immediately. I'll say it again, everyone has a share. Chapter 3352. A Bountiful Harvest. Chapter 3353. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Clues to the cave emptiness. After calming himself down, Yi Xian stepped out of the simple and temporary cave residence. Outside, the purplish warbler, Duanmu Xiaocha, and Zhao Qianru had finished their stroll and were waiting outside the cave residence. Seeing Yi Xian walk out of the cave residence and sensing the powerful aura of the Grotto Heaven realm faintly emanating from his body, the three girls had different reactions, but they were all happy for him. Congratulations, you've finally entered the Grotto Heaven realm. Wow, the Grotto Heaven realm is still there. Big brother idol, you have to protect me. From now on, if anyone dares to bully me, Duanmu Xiaocha, I'll tell them your name. You're really a bastard. I've just entered the 9th stage origin realm and was about to catch up to you. Who would have thought that I would be left behind in less than half a day? How infuriating. Yi Xian rolled his eyes at her. It was one thing for the purplish warbler to grumble happily, but what the hell was Duanmu Xiaocha talking about? She made it sound as if she had committed a sin since she was young and was bullied all the time. She was clearly the little princess of the Duanmu clan, one of the top 3 clans in the Heavenly Wind Empire's gene fluid industry. She was the designated successor, okay? With her temperament as a little witch, it was good enough that she didn't bully others. How could others bully her? Yi Xian was extremely suspicious that she would use his name to intimidate others and flaunt her prowess everywhere. After all, after this battle, young Master Ling Hu's name would definitely resound throughout the 3 dimensions of the universe. It was very likely that his fame would overshadow Prince Xian's. In the future, once Yi Xian took the initiative to reveal his identity, this girl would most likely pull on his tiger skin and flaunt it everywhere. Unfortunately, he couldn't warn her about this matter because that would be tantamount to reminding her in advance. With this girl's temperament, she might start to think about it later. Thinking of this, Yi Xian couldn't help but bitterly smile again. Then, before he could say anything, Xianyuan Ziying spoke up first. She frowned and asked, "Oh right, I didn't pay attention before and forgot to ask you. You said that your cultivation technique had been stagnant for a while, and you stopped at the first level of the black hole. You changed your path to physical evolution because... Are you cultivating the void cavern technique?" "Huh? How do you know the technique?" Yi Xian was stunned for a moment before subconsciously replying. Then, he instantly came to a realization and a happy expression appeared on his face as he excitedly asked, "I understand now. So the tortoise shell that I bought at the Heavenly River auction house was actually taken out by you. Is that so?" How could he not? There had never been any clues to the later stages of the Dongshu fragment. As for the existence of the tortoise shell that was auctioned off in the Heavenly River Star, as long as Yi Xian had the heart to personally make a trip to the Heavenly River Star, he would definitely be able to find out. But what if he found out? What if the other party was not on Sky River Planet, or had other intentions and did not tell him the truth? Yi Xian couldn't do anything about it. Because of this, he had always lacked interest in this matter and did not hold much hope, so he was not in a hurry to go to Sky River Planet. Of course, there were too many things on hand and trouble came one after another. One of the reasons was that he really didn't have the time. But now, all these problems had been solved. The original owner of the ancient tortoise shell that contained the first 8 levels of the cave technique was in front of Yi Xian at this moment, and he was an acquaintance. There was no possibility that he would hide anything from Yi Xian. For him, this was definitely a great surprise. Because it was very likely that he would be able to find clues about the rest of the cave technique. It seems that I guessed right. The technique you practice is indeed the cave technique. Seeing Yi Xian's reaction, the purplish warbler understood everything. He immediately shook his head and smiled bitterly. This is all my fault. When I first obtained the ancient tortoise shell, I actually struggled for a long time. In the end, I gritted my teeth and gave up completely. After all, this is an ancient technique that can be called a supreme treasure. No one can easily ignore it. But later, when you bought the tortoise shell, I didn't mean to not remind you. If it weren't for the accident that happened soon after leaving Sky River Planet, I would have asked you about this matter and given you some advice. Later, when you and I were separated, I didn't know where you and Lulua were. I didn't even know whether you were alive or dead. At that time, I was so anxious that I completely forgot about this matter. I didn't expect you to be so stubborn. You knew that it was incomplete and only contained the first few levels of the technique. You could only cultivate it to the 8th level of the black hole realm, but you still practiced it. At this point, the purplish warbler smiled bitterly again. Because of this, you can only stop practicing this technique and change your path to the evolution of the human body. This is all my fault. Fortunately, your talent in alchemy is amazing. You were able to concoct the 10th and 11th level geno fluids on your own. Presumably, it will be difficult to concoct the 12th and 13th level geno fluids required for the evolution of the human body in the future. In the end, this matter did not lead to the end of your path of cultivation. Otherwise, I would have regretted it for the rest of my life. After saying this, the purplish warbler had an apologetic look on his face. After all, this was the truth. If it were not for Yi Xian, this matter would have been extremely troublesome for him. In fact, if it were another Starry Sky Master, it was very likely that they would not even be able to obtain the 8th or 9th level geno fluids. They were too precious. In that case, it would be impossible to decide to walk the path of the evolution of the human body. This also meant that their cultivation would be completely stagnant, and there would be no hope for them to move forward. No, why are you saying this? What's the relationship between the two of us? You can trick anyone, but you can't trick me. Because of his excitement, Yi Xian did not choose his words carefully. As soon as these words left his mouth, the purplish warbler's face immediately turned red. Duanmu Xiaocha and Zhao Qianru on the side also covered their mouths and snickered. However, he did not realize that something was wrong at all. He then continued to ask, his hand subconsciously holding the purplish warbler's soft shoulders, anyway, that's not important. Not to mention that you didn't persuade me, even if you did, I have to learn the void dimension technique. The most important question now is, that ancient tortoiseshell, where did you get it? You want to find the next part of this technique? The purplish warbler was shocked, and the bashful look on her face quickly disappeared. She stared at Yi Xian with a serious expression and warned, I advise you to stop here and not dwell on this matter. Because I also tried to find it before. Not only was there no result, but I also narrowly escaped death, and that was under the circumstances that there was no external pressure. But you are different. You and the various races of the Second Universe Federation are now like fire and water. The other exit of the giant universe wormhole that connects the first universe and the second universe is always guarded by the allied forces of the second universe. All the warships that enter and leave the wormhole must be inspected to prevent the experts of the Tianji clan or their slave races from sneaking in. As long as you go there, you will be discovered immediately. Chapter 3354. Chapter 3354, Chapter 335 Abyss Turtle Sea. What's more, the place where I got the ancient turtle shell is an extremely dangerous place in the second universe. How can you still have the energy to explore the Abyss Turtle Sea when the external pressure is so strong that it's terrifying? Hearing this, Yi Xian was stunned. The Abyss Turtle Sea? The Abyss Turtle Sea in the second universe? The purplish warbler was right. Given the irreconcilable relationship between Yi Xian and the races of the Second Universe Federation, it would indeed be difficult for him to move an inch if he went to the second universe. On the one hand, the exit of the giant natural wormhole from the first universe to the second universe was guarded by a large number of the allied forces of the Second Universe Federation, and the inspection was very strict. On the other hand, even if Yi Xian could change his appearance again, or simply go with the identity of Prince Xian, he would still expose himself as young Master Linghu in the end if there were no accidents. This was because Yi Xian's combat weapon, armor, and warship had all been exposed as young Master Linghu after the last fusion. In a short time, it was obviously impossible for him to refine these three basic treasures of the Starry Sky powerhouses and change their appearance again. After all, they were quasi-Starry Sky supreme treasures. Ordinary materials and treasures of the same type were not worthy of them at all. If he forcibly mixed them in and refined them, it was even possible that the grade would be affected and the refinement would fail. The further he went, the more likely the refinement would fail, which was equivalent to wasting all his previous efforts. Therefore, Yi Xian could not be reckless with every refinement in the future. He had to be very careful. In addition to these three basic treasures of the Starry Sky powerhouses, he had exposed many magical secret methods and spiritual skills as young Master Linghu. After arriving in the second universe, it was impossible not to reveal all of these. At least, small private warships were often used. Moreover, the Abyss Turtle's Sea was extremely dangerous, even in the periphery. Yi Xian needed to summon the indestructible glass armor, and although the Void Sea was dangerous, it happened to be quite beneficial. Therefore, not only the powerhouses of the Federation of the Second Universe but also many of the powerhouses of the human race of the Third Universe flocked there. Under such circumstances, with so many eyes, the chances of Yi Xian being exposed were extremely high. Once his identity was exposed, it would definitely have a huge impact on Yi Xian. At the same time, there would be danger looming. All the races of the Federation in the Second Universe would probably go crazy and try to keep him here. The Nether Turtle Ocean is the habitat of the Nether Turtle clan in the Second Universe. Even though the Void Ocean is too vast, so the Nether Turtle clan doesn't prohibit outsiders from exploring it. It's even to the extent that the human experts from the First Universe are no exception. However, it's really too dangerous for you to head there. Just as Yi Xian was pondering, Zhao Qianru took over the conversation. She looked at Yi Xian with a serious expression and said, although the Nether Turtle race is reclusive and doesn't like to interact with others, they are still one of the races in the Second Universe's Federation. Furthermore, they are one of the top 10 races. If you enter the Nether Turtle Ocean, even if you won't be discovered by other powerhouses, you definitely won't be able to escape the surveillance of the Nether Turtle clan. There's at least a 90% chance of your identity being exposed. Purplish Warbler and Duanmu Xiaocha tried to persuade him again. Therefore, it's better not to consider this matter anymore. It's too dangerous and not worth it. After all, after Big Sister Ziying obtained the ancient turtle shell, she also explored the nearby Void Ocean. She didn't find anything at all. Even if you go, you might not be able to obtain anything. Why bother? At the end of her sentence, Duanmu Xiaocha pursed her lips and looked pitifully at Yi Xian. She said, if anything were to happen to you over there, how would we three sisters be able to live? Bah, don't misunderstand, what I mean is that you are my idol. If something were to happen to you, I would definitely be sad. If there's really no way to live, it'll be the two of them at most. Especially Big Sister Ziying. In any case, it doesn't include me. Before Duanmu Xiaocha could finish speaking, Purplish Warbler and Zhao Qianru had already reacted. Large amounts of red light appeared on their faces at the same time. Perhaps it was because they felt too embarrassed, but they actually chased after Duanmu Xiaocha and slapped her to cover it up. Aya, you damned girl. You've chosen too cleanly. So what if you're playing? You're extremely nimble when it comes to harming the two of us. I didn't notice that this little girl really knows how to scheme. For a time, the three of them were in a mess, and it instead left Yi Xian, who had a solemn expression and thought that he was talking about an important matter, alone at the side. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. In the end, Yi Xian asked Purplish Warbler about the exact location of the Nether Turtle Ocean where she'd obtained the ancient turtle shell by chance. On the surface, he expressed that he would seriously consider this question. At the very least, he hadn't decided to go to the Nether Turtle Ocean yet. But in reality, Yi Xian didn't need to consider this question at all. He was definitely going to the Second Universe. Even if he didn't mention going to the Nether Turtle Ocean to search for the follow-up to the Hollow Dimension technique, he still had to go. This was because ever since his system title had been upgraded, Yi Xian now had the ability to jump across dimensions. However, if he wanted to activate this ability and successfully perform a coordinate jump, the prerequisite was that the dimension he was going to had to be adjacent to each other. Moreover, he had to have already imprinted the coordinates of the target dimension in advance. At present, there were only 3 known dimensions, or rather, the ones that had been more or less completely explored. They were the first universe occupied by the Tianji clan, the second universe shared by the various races of the Federation, and the third universe occupied by the human race. These 3 dimensions were all connected to each other because they were all connected by giant natural wormholes. However, Yi Xian had already imprinted the coordinates of both the first and second universes. He had never even gone to the second universe before, so he hadn't completed the mission yet. Just for the sake of completing this mission, he had to go to the second universe no matter what. As for the so-called danger, Yi Xian didn't care at all. In his opinion, he would just have to deal with whatever came his way. Back when he was just a core realm cultivator, he dared to venture into the first universe ruled by the Tianji clan alone, let alone now that he was already a level 1 Grotto Heaven realm cultivator, who was already a level 1 Starry Sky realm cultivator. People couldn't go back in time the longer they lived. Just this reason alone was enough to make Yi Xian firm on his decision to go. Then, Yi Xian asked how long he had been in seclusion this time. When he learned that 2 days had already passed, he immediately couldn't sit still anymore. He waved his hand at the purplish warbler, Duanmu Xiaocha, and Zhao Qianru and said, I almost messed up the proper business. Previously, I made an agreement with those old bastards of the various races of the Federation in the second universe. If they don't ransom the people in 3 days, I'll stew them all in one pot. This matter can't be delayed. Otherwise, I'm afraid I won't be able to hold the fort later. As a person, I can't go back on my words. Chapter 3355. Green Rope transforms into a dragon. The 3 purplish warbler girls behind him were stunned for a moment, and then rolled their eyes. It was really intoxicating for him to use the phrase, can't go back on one's word. At the same time, in the void outside the cauldron, 2 figures were flying toward the cauldron from 2 different directions. They were Xiaoyao Zi and Inxia Fairy, 2 of the 4 peerless geniuses of the human clan who had recently appeared in the world. Right now, 2 days had passed since Yi Xian gave them the 3-day deadline. The allied forces of the second universe that had gone to the capital of Tianshan country, Tianshan Star, had already returned yesterday. They had spent a lot of money to send all kinds of treasures and rare minerals through the micro-wormhole. They had put them into small space boxes and sent them into the Shinnon Cauldron. It was the same for the top families and forces of the third universe. Many small space boxes, which contained the so-called ransom they thought should be enough, were thrown into the mouth of the Shinnon Cauldron. Of course, every small space box had a label, indicating the origin of the thrower. What followed was a long and boring day of waiting. Young Master Ling Hu did not show up for the entire day. Instead, the human prisoners of war were busy under the leadership of the so-called 8 great guardian deities. There were more than 200 small space boxes piled up into a small hill. They would open every small space box to check if the heavenly materials and earthly treasures and rare minerals inside matched the quantities on the lists. They did their best, but the elders of the various races of the Federation in the second universe gnashed their teeth in anger. The people in charge of the top families of the human race were even more embarrassed. They could only use one reason to comfort themselves. They were forced to do this, and they had no other choice. It was also at this moment that a silver ray of light shot over from the distant void. This person was Fairy Inxia, and she came from planet Long Xia in the Heavenly Wind Empire. She was one of the 4 peerless prodigies of the human race. She was young, but she was already a 9th stage mystic light realm cultivator. She created the Jade Dragon Island and called herself the Island Master. She also had the ancient treasure, the soul-binding chain. Although this treasure was in the shape of a rope, its power was extraordinary, and it had a strong origin. It was said that when heaven and earth first separated in ancient times, there was a spirit stone in the world. It had already existed during the chaos. After heaven and earth separated, this spirit stone absorbed the essence of the sun and moon during the ancient times, exploiting the chaos energy. Finally, it matured and became a spirit beast, roaming between heaven and earth. After it died, it was buried in the spiritual mountain and spiritual stone. 1,000 years later, the spiritual stone and stone, spiritual stone. It was said that when the spiritual stone studio, it was spiritual stone, Tao, spiritual stone, and spiritual stone, spiritual studio, spiritual and Z, spiritual studio, is spiritual studio editor studio. The reason why Inxia Fairy became famous and was respected as one of the 4 peerless geniuses of the younger generation of the human clan was not unrelated to her own terrifying talent, but to a certain extent, it was because of this. Back then, he had displayed the soul shackle in front of everyone. When this shackle was casually tossed out by her, it instantly shone brightly with silver light and transformed into a 1,000-meter-long silver dragon phantom. The desolate aura it emitted covered the heavens and the earth, and it actually cut a 1,000-meter-long planetary-level battleship into 2 in the blink of an eye. It was like pulling tofu with steel wires, and it was truly shocking. The sudden arrival of Fairy Yin Xia was obviously for young Master Linghu. This caused a commotion. After the initial shock, the experts of the human clan who were trapped in the void around the formation began to whisper to each other and discuss among themselves. Could it be that Fairy Inxia refused to accept the reputation of Linghu young master as one of the 2 peerless geniuses of the clan? Was that why she had come in person and wanted to take him down a notch? Unfortunately, she did not have the chance to do so. Young Master Linghu was holed up in the giant star cauldron and would not come out at all. He had already altered the cauldron's internal domain. Although it was no longer the same as before, where only starry sky experts below the origin realm could enter, it was only an increase of 1 major realm. The highest level of cultivation that could enter was now limited to the 9th major realm, the origin realm. At the 9th major realm, the grand perfection of the 9th rank. Fairy Yin Xia, on the other hand, was at the peak of the 9th realm of the mystic light realm. She was definitely powerful, but she had exceeded the limits of the internal field of the giant star cauldron by an entire realm. There was no way she could enter. It's a pity that young Master Linghu is holed up in the giant star cauldron. Otherwise, this battle would definitely be very exciting. That's right. A peerless genius fighting a peerless genius. This is a grand occasion for the younger generation of the human clan. It could have happened, but now it's completely impossible. What a pity. It's obvious that young Master Linghu is not confident enough. Maybe he's holed up in the giant star cauldron not just to avoid the grand cultivators of universe. He's too famous, so naturally, he's under a lot of pressure. Young Master Linghu probably predicted this situation and avoided it in advance. Some people thought that young Master Linghu had escaped a calamity today. Otherwise, even though he was known as one of the 2 peerless prodigies of the human race, he still hadn't truly matured yet. Even though he had astonishingly broken through 2 minor stages in a row during the previous battle, his cultivation base was still only at the pinnacle of the 9th level of the origin stage. Even though he had the ability to fight across realms, he wasn't the invincible war god who was still causing trouble in the self-cultivator camp. This wasn't his strength. If he were to fight Fairy Yin Xia, who was at the peak of the 9th level of the mystic light realm, he would probably be defeated. While the discussion was going on, the fairy-like Inxia Fairy in a white dress finally came close. Her face was cold, without any expression, but her eyes were glittering. She completely ignored the large number of starry sky experts, battleships, fortresses, and even small fortresses in the void around the space trap formation. In her eyes, there seemed to be only the tunnel that the space trap array had opened for her. After entering the array, she would be able to reach the space above the giant star cauldron. Sure enough, after arriving, Fairy Yin Xia didn't stop for a moment. She immediately jumped into the tunnel and headed straight for the giant star cauldron in the center of the space trap array. Seeing this scene, the numerous powerhouses in the starry sky outside the grand array cried out in surprise again. What does she want to do? Does she want to enter the giant star cauldron? How is that possible? Since she knows that the incident happened in this star field, Fairy Yin Xia must have gotten some information from the star web before she came here. So, how could she not know the entry limit of the giant star cauldron? Could it be that she has another way to force her way in? If that's the case, then the Heavenly Battle Empire's ancestor Zhan too came here for nothing. Wouldn't it be better for him to stay here and wait for Fairy Yin Xia to come to him? He can just use this method to enter together. Whoosh! Before the discussions around the space trap array stopped, Fairy Yin Xia, who had already entered the array, had already made her move. With a faint sound of breaking through the air, she waved her right hand, and a green light shot out. Chapter 3356. Fairy descends. As Fairy Yin Xia waved her hand, a green waterfall shot out from her hand. It expanded with the wind, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a green dragon that was thousands of feet long. Before the many starry sky masters outside the void trap formation could recover from their shock, the giant azure dragon opened its ferocious maw and swallowed Fairy Yin Xia in one gulp. Then, it turned around and plunged headfirst into the nine-colored mist above the mouth of the giant star cauldron, disappearing. If an existence whose cultivation base had exceeded the ninth stage of the origin stage attempted to enter the giant star cauldron, they would be attacked as soon as they came into contact with the mysterious nine-colored mist above the mouth of the giant star cauldron. The nine-colored mist above the mouth of the cauldron would turn into a mysterious nine-colored flame in an instant. Using the aura of the divine sense as a guide, it would lock onto the body and burn continuously until the body and soul were destroyed and turned into ashes. After all, the farmer god cauldron was a primordial treasure. When it was combined with the farmer god cauldron, its level was raised to the level of a primordial treasure. The nine-colored flame, which represented its strongest power, was obviously no small matter. Previously, an expert of the Heaven Battle Emperor clan had tried it. An elder of the Heaven Battle Emperor clan, who was at the late stage of the Void Realm, almost died under this mysterious and terrifying nine-colored flame. Even the mighty figure of the Heaven and Earth Emperor clan, Zhan Tu ancestor, was extremely afraid after trying it. He concluded that even if he forced his way in, the result would be either death or injury. Moreover, it would be a serious injury that was close to death. If not, Zhan Tu ancestor of the Heaven and Earth Emperor clan would have forced his way in long ago. He would not have spent so much effort to visit a friend and ask for help. This kind of thing required one to owe a favor, and the favor of a mighty figure of the Heaven and Earth Emperor clan was obviously not so easy to owe. It was very likely that it would be of great importance in the future. However, at this moment, the green dragon plunged headfirst into the giant star cauldron, but it did not cause any changes at all. The mysterious nine-colored mist above the mouth of the giant star cauldron only surged for a while before it became still. It did not seem to reject the green dragon. As for Fairy Yin Xia, after she was swallowed by the green dragon, her aura was concealed by the body of the green dragon. Even the internal field of the farmer god cauldron could not sense her. It could be seen that the treasure that summoned the green dragon must be extraordinary, at least a primordial treasure, not inferior to the farmer god cauldron. Look, she actually went in, safe and sound. The nine mist above the cauldron's mouth of the cauldron did not stop her. This is really too shocking. What is the origin of that green dragon? This dragon seems to be formed from a thin rope. When Fairy Yin Xia threw it out earlier, it was clearly a green rope, its soul-entangling chain, soul-binding. It must be that treasure. I didn't expect it to be able to transform into a green dragon. It's obvious that Fairy Yin Xia did not use its full power last time. She held back. It seems that the four peerless prodigies of the human race must have held back, including the carefree child, the fallen demon child, and the demon dust woman. Their true strength must be even stronger. Young Master Linghu is in trouble this time. No matter how strong the internal field of the giant star cauldron is, there are still flaws. Fairy Yin Xia is at the peak of the mystic light realm, the 11th realm. She is 2 realms stronger than young Master Linghu. No matter how monstrous he is, he won't be able to defeat her this time. He is destined to be suppressed. As these cries of surprise rang out, the face of the Heaven Battle Emperor clan's clan elder, Zhan Yi, who was guarding outside the Great Void Trap formation, who was at the peak of the 9th level void realm, had completely darkened. He never thought that someone would be able to ignore the restrictions of the giant star cauldron's field and charge in with a cultivation that far surpassed the 9th realm of the origin. Even the most powerful beings in heaven and earth wouldn't be able to do this unless they had a specific secret technique. However, a peak of the mystic light realm, the 11th realm, managed to do it. To Zhang Yi, this was a huge change. He wasn't worried that Yi Xian would be killed by Fairy Inxia, who had accidentally entered the space inside the cauldron. Instead, he was worried that Fairy Inxia would be the first to take away all the fortunes related to Yi Xian. She was at the peak of the 9th stage of the mystic light realm, which was more than 2 whole realms higher than young Master Linghu. She definitely had the power to crush him, and it was even possible to capture him alive. Since the soul-entangling chain, which had transformed into a 1,000-feet-long azure dragon, could easily ignore the rules of the field and force its way into the space inside the giant star cauldron, it meant that its level was definitely not lower than the giant cauldron. It was at least a primordial treasure. If Fairy Inxia had such a treasure with her, she could easily escape after capturing young Master Linghu. She would leave the way she came. With the mysterious power of the soul-entangling chain, there was no supreme figure of the 15th Great Realm present. Who else could stop her? As these thoughts flashed through his mind, Zhang Yi's face became more and more gloomy. After thinking for a while, he immediately issued an order and shouted in a deep voice, "Immediately close the portal of the void trap array. This woman has an ancient treasure in her hand. Even so, I don't know if we can stop her. Everyone, be alert. Once the situation changes, immediately take action." In other words, he was clearly reminding the experts of the various forces in the void that young Master Linghu, who was in the giant star cauldron, was very likely to come out soon and be captured by Fairy Inxia and forced to flee far away. The powerful beings of the human clan in the surrounding space were instantly refreshed. After waiting for so long, the critical moment was finally here. They originally thought that this moment would come when the powerful beings of the war race returned, but they didn't expect that it would be brought forward by the sudden arrival of Fairy Inxia. At the same time, in the space occupied by the allied forces of the second universe, there was also a burst of arrogant laughter, revealing a sense of venting. "Ha ha ha, is that brat finally going to die? This is so satisfying. This time, even if I have to risk my life, I will definitely make him stay. Ha ha ha. Old wolf, count me in." "Me too. I don't care about any benefits on this brat now. As long as he appears, I will definitely attack with all my strength. If I can keep him alive, that's fine. If I can't, I will kill him directly. Fellow cultivators of the human clan, please don't stop me at that time. Otherwise, don't blame me for being hostile." With the strange laughter of these old monsters of the allied forces of the second universe, the high-level beings of the human clan present suddenly frowned. However, before they could say anything, some of the powerful beings of the starry sky who had been paying attention to the silver light curtain in the void trap formation had already exclaimed, "Look, young Master Linghu has finally appeared after disappearing for 2 days.